You're only here to serve men like us.
The words cut through the expensive air of Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, spoken in French by a billionaire who assumed the quiet waitress couldn't understand him. But Elena Brooks understood every syllable, and when she finally looked up from her serving tray and responded in flawless French, the arrogant tech mogul's world shattered in an instant. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this journey travels. The crystal chandeliers of Lumiere cast fractured light across white marble floors, creating shadows that danced between tables where Chicago's elite conducted business over plates that cost more than most people's weekly paychecks. Elena Brooks moved through those shadows like she'd been born to them, which was ironic considering she'd grown up in a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than piano music. She'd been working at Lumiere for 8 months now, 8 months of carrying $100 steaks to men who didn't look at her face. 8 months of perfecting the art of invisible service, of anticipating needs before they were spoken, of existing as hands that delivered food and cleared plates and nothing more. Elena preferred it that way. At 30 years old, she'd learned that being noticed rarely ended well for women like her. Women who worked night shifts to pay for day classes. Women whose designer uniforms were provided by management, but whose winter coat had come from Goodwill 3 years ago. Women who split tips with their younger sister's insulin costs and still somehow made it to 8 a.m. lectures on international trade policy. Table 7 needs water, Marcus whispered as he passed her in the service corridor, his arms loaded with dirty dishes. He was one of the few staff members who actually spoke to her beyond work necessities. And they're already being assholes, so, brace yourself. Elena nodded, filling a crystal pitcher from the filtration system. Through the circular window in the swinging door, she could see table 7. 5 men in suits that probably cost more than her semester's tuition. The kind of men who laughed too loud and treated the world like it existed for their amusement. She recognized the type. Hell, she'd been serving them her entire adult life. What she didn't recognize was the man at the head of the table. Adrian Vaughn sat like someone who'd never questioned his right to exist in any space he occupied. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair styled in that effortless way that definitely required effort, and probably a stylist who made more than Elena's professors. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and his watch caught the light every time he gestured, which he did often while talking. He was handsome in that sharp, calculated way that came from money and gym memberships and probably a skincare routine. But it was his eyes that caught Elena's attention as she approached the table. Dark, intelligent, and completely cold, like he was solving equations while pretending to listen to the joke one of his companions was telling. "Gentlemen," Elena said quietly, her voice barely carrying over their laughter, "would anyone care for—" Finally, one of them interrupted, a red-faced man who smelled like he'd already had too much wine. "We've been waiting forever. Don't they train you people about timing?" Elena's jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. "My apologies, sir. Would you like to hear tonight's specials?" "What we'd like," Adrian Vaughn said, his voice smooth and measured, "is service that doesn't require us to flag down staff like we're at a highway diner." His accent was interesting. American, definitely, but with the rounded edges of expensive education. Probably East Coast prep schools. Definitely Ivy League. "Of course, sir," Elena replied, keeping her eyes down. "I'll be more attentive." As she began describing the specials, Adrian leaned back in his chair and said something in rapid French to the man beside him. Elena's hand tightened imperceptibly on the water pitcher. "Tes cerveaux," Adrian continued in French, a small smirk playing at his lips. "They're all the same, aren't they? Pretty enough to look at, but that's where it ends. I suppose we should be grateful they can manage to write down orders without making too many mistakes." The other men laughed. Elena continued describing the Chilean sea bass like nothing had happened. "My wife used to say I should tip better," the red-faced man said in French, emboldened by Adrian's mockery. "I told her why. It's not exactly skilled labor." "It's not even real work," another added. "My daughter is their age, finishing her doctorate. These women, they're just waiting for some man to rescue them from having to think for themselves." Elena finished the specials. "Would you like a few minutes to decide?" "Yes, yes." Adrian waved her away dismissively, already turning back to his companions. Then, just as she was about to leave, he added in French, Although I'm not sure timing matters when the help is only here to look pleasant and serve food. It's not as if we hired them for their intellect. Something crystallized in Elena's chest. Not anger, exactly. She'd felt anger before, hot and useless. This was colder, clearer. She set down the water pitcher with a soft click. "Gentlemen," she said in perfect Parisian French, her accent cleaner than Adrian's expensive American approximation. "I'll return in 5 minutes to take your orders. That should give you enough time to decide what you want to eat, and perhaps reflect on what you want to say where everyone can understand you." The table went silent. Adrian's head snapped up, his cold eyes meeting hers for the first time all evening. Really meeting them. Elena saw the exact moment he registered what had happened, watched his expression shift from shock to something she couldn't quite name. "I apologize if you found the wait time too long," Elena continued in English now, her voice still quiet but no longer deferential. "It was not my intention to delay your evening. However, I should mention that while I'm employed here to serve food, I'm not employed to accept disrespect in any language." She picked up the water pitcher again. "I'll return shortly." Elena walked away with the same measured grace she'd approached with, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she could feel 5 sets of eyes burning into her back. She didn't look back, didn't let her hand shake until she was safely in the kitchen, setting down the pitcher before her trembling fingers could drop it. "Holy shit," Marcus breathed, appearing at her elbow. "Did you just—" "I need a minute," Elena interrupted, heading for the staff bathroom. In the single stall, she locked the door and pressed her forehead against the cool metal. What had she done? She needed this job, needed it desperately. Her sister Kara's insulin pump needed replacing. Her tuition payment was due in 2 weeks, and their landlord had already warned them about late rent once this year. But the words had come out anyway. Some humiliations you could swallow, some you couldn't. Elena straightened, looking at herself in the scratched mirror above the sink. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, a few strands escaping around her face. Her brown eyes looked tired, but then they always did lately. The black uniform dress fit well enough, professional and forgettable, exactly as intended. Except tonight, she hadn't been forgettable. A knock on the bathroom door made her jump. "Elena?" It was Sarah, the floor manager. "I need you back out there. Table 7 is asking for you specifically." Of course they were. Elena washed her hands, straightened her uniform, and walked back into the dining room with her chin up. Whatever was about to happen, she'd face it standing tall. Adrian Vaughn was no longer sitting with his companions. He stood near the service station, hands in his pockets, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a way that probably wasn't familiar to him. When he saw her approaching, something flickered across his face. Not quite remorse, not quite respect. Something in between. "Miss Brooks," he said, and she was surprised he knew her name. Then she remembered the name tag pinned to her uniform. "I'd like to apologize." Elena stopped a careful 3 feet away. "That's not necessary, Mr. Vaughn. Adrian Vaughn." He extended his hand, then seemed to realize the power dynamic that created and lowered it awkwardly. "And it is necessary. What I said was inexcusable." Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought. Maybe 32, 33. The coldness in his eyes wasn't age then. It was something else. Something chosen. "You assumed I wouldn't understand," Elena said quietly. "People make assumptions all the time." "That doesn't excuse it." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the restaurant swirling around them. Adrian Vaughn looked like he wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words, which Elena suspected was unusual for him. "Your table is waiting," she finally said. "I'll be over shortly to take your orders." "Actually," Adrian said, "I'd prefer if someone else served us tonight. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." Elena almost laughed. "Mr. Vaughn, if I stopped serving every table that made me uncomfortable, I'd be unemployed. It's fine, I'm a professional." Something in his expression shifted. "Clearly, that's evident." When Elena returned to table 7 with her notepad, the atmosphere had changed. The loud jokes had stopped. The red-faced man looked vaguely ashamed, though he couldn't quite meet her eyes. Adrian's companions suddenly found their menus fascinating. She took their orders efficiently, answered questions about preparations and ingredients, and refilled drinks without comment. They were painfully polite now, using please and thank you like children who'd been corrected. All except Adrian, who didn't order food at all. Just water for now, he said when she reached him. I seem to have lost my appetite. Their eyes met again. Elena saw something in his face that looked almost like curiosity. The ribeye here is excellent, she offered, surprising herself. If you change your mind, do you like working here? The question came out abruptly, like he hadn't meant to ask it. Elena paused, pen hovering over her notepad. It was a strange question, complicated. It pays my bills, she said finally, and the kitchen staff is kind. That's not what I asked. No, Elena agreed, but it's what I'm answering. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. What were you doing before you started working here? Elena looked back at him. Why does that matter? It doesn't, Adrian admitted. I'm just trying to understand. Understand what? How someone who speaks 4 languages, 5, Elena corrected automatically, then cursed herself for the correction. Adrian's eyebrows rose. 5 languages. How someone with that kind of education ends up serving food to people who don't have the basic decency to respect her. Elena could have told him the truth. Could have explained about her father's death when she was 22. The medical debt. Her mother's breakdown. Taking custody of 14-year-old Kara. Could have described working 3 jobs while finishing her undergraduate degree. The scholarship she'd lost when she had to take a semester off for Kara's diabetes diagnosis. The careful mathematics of survival that led her here. Instead, she said, Life is complicated, Mr. Vaughn. Not everything fits into neat narratives. I'm beginning to realize that. Back in the kitchen, Marcus grabbed her arm. Okay, you need to tell me what's happening because Adrian fucking Vaughn just asked Sarah who you were and she looked like she might have a heart attack. He asked who I was? Full name, how long you've worked here, everything. Do you know who he is? Elena shook her head. He's only worth like $3 billion. Tech investments, mostly. He's got a daughter, wife died a few years back. Total recluse except for business stuff. And he just spent 10 minutes asking about you. Elena's stomach twisted. That doesn't mean anything. Girl, men like that don't ask questions unless they want something. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Elena served table 7 with mechanical efficiency, barely registering the food she placed in front of them or the subdued conversations happening around it. Adrian ate maybe 3 bites of the ribeye he eventually ordered, spent most of dinner checking his phone and occasionally glancing in her direction when he thought she wasn't looking. When they finally left, he placed a folded bill under his water glass. Elena didn't look at it until she was clearing the table, and then she nearly dropped the tray. $500. She found Sarah immediately. I can't accept this. Sarah looked at the bill, then at Elena. Why not? Because it's too much. It's guilt money. Honey, all tips are guilt money for men like that. Take it. You earned it by not throwing water in his face when he was being an ass. But Elena couldn't. The money sat in her pocket like a stone all through cleanup, through the walk to the Blue Line station, through the rattling train ride back to her neighborhood where the streets were darker and the sirens were louder. It wasn't until she was home, standing in the cramped kitchen of the apartment she shared with Kara, that she finally pulled the bill out again. Attached to it was a business card. Adrian Vaughn, Capital Investments. On the back, written in neat handwriting, I'm sorry. Truly. If you're ever interested in discussing opportunities beyond restaurant work, please call. No obligations, no expectations. Just an apology and an offer. AV. Elena stared at it for a long moment, then tucked both the card and the money into her wallet. She'd return the money somehow. The card. She wasn't sure about the card. You're late, Kara said, shuffling into the kitchen in her pajamas. At 19, she looked younger, especially with her blonde hair messy from sleep. How was work? Weird, Elena said honestly. Weird how? Elena thought about Adrian Vaughn's cold eyes and expensive suit, about the way he'd spoken about her in French like she was furniture, about the genuine discomfort in his voice when he apologized. Just weird, she said finally. How are you feeling? Did you eat dinner? Yes, Mom. Kara rolled her eyes. Blood sugar's fine. I did my homework. And before you ask, no, I didn't have any soda. Elena smiled despite her exhaustion. Good. There's a letter from the university, Kara said, her voice careful, about next semester's tuition. The small moment of lightness evaporated. I'll handle it. Elena, eat. I said I'll handle it, Kara said. Her sister looked like she wanted to argue, but Elena's expression must have warned her off. Instead, Kara hugged her, quick and tight. You work too hard, she murmured. Someone has to. After Kara went back to bed, Elena sat at their secondhand kitchen table with her laptop, reviewing the budget spreadsheet that ruled her life. Tuition, $8,000. Kara's medical supplies, $400. Rent, $1,200. Utilities, groceries, transportation, books. The numbers didn't lie. They never did. She pulled out Adrian Vaughn's business card again, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Opportunities beyond restaurant work. What kind of opportunities? Executive assistant, personal servant. She'd heard stories about wealthy men who thought their money entitled them to whatever they wanted, but there had been something genuine in his apology, something almost vulnerable. Elena tucked the card back in her wallet without making any decisions. Tomorrow she had class at 8, a study group at noon, and another shift at Lumiere at 5. She didn't have time to think about billionaires with cold eyes and complicated apologies, except she did think about it. 3 days later, Adrian Vaughn returned to Lumiere. Alone this time, requesting a table in Elena's section specifically. Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement when she told her. He asked for you by name. By name, Elena. Maybe he wants to apologize again, Elena said, trying to calm her racing heart. Or maybe he wants to offer you a job. Do you know how many people would kill for a connection to Vaughn Capital? Elena didn't want connections. She wanted to finish her degree, get Kara through college, and build a life that didn't require serving men who looked through her like glass. But she tied her apron on and approached table 7, his requested table, with her professional mask firmly in place. Adrian stood when she approached, which surprised her. Men like him didn't usually stand for women like her. Miss Brooks, he said, thank you for agreeing to serve me again. I didn't agree to anything, Elena replied. You requested my section. My manager assigned you to me. A small smile tugged at his mouth. Fair enough. May I sit? It's your table, Mr. Vaughn. He sat, but the smile didn't quite fade. You returned the tip. Elena had indeed returned it, leaving it with the hostess the next day with instructions to give it back to Mr. Vaughn if he returned. It was excessive. It was appropriate for the circumstance. It was guilt money. I don't want guilt money. Then what do you want? The question was direct, his dark eyes meeting hers without wavering. Elena considered lying, considered saying something safe and meaningless. Instead, she heard herself say, I want people to respect me regardless of where I work or how much money I have. I want my sister to be healthy and my degree to actually lead somewhere. I want to stop being so tired all the time. Adrian's expression softened into something almost human. That's honest. You asked. I did. He leaned back, studying her with that same analytical look from before. The card I left you. Did you consider calling? No. Why not? Because I don't know what you want from me, Mr. Vaughn, and I'm not interested in finding out through uncomfortable conversations about opportunities. What if I told you it wasn't about what I want from you, but what I could offer to you? Elena set down her notepad. Then I'd say that sounds like the beginning of a proposition I'm definitely not interested in. Not that kind of offer, Adrian said quickly, and for the first time she saw him look genuinely flustered. I meant professionally. I have connections, resources. You're clearly intelligent, educated, ambitious. You speak 5 languages. You're working in a restaurant not because you want to, but because you have to. And you want to save me. Elena's voice was colder than she intended. Is that what this is? Rich man rescues poor waitress? No, Adrian said quietly. I want to stop being the kind of person who mocks people in languages he thinks they won't understand. I want my daughter to grow up seeing me treat people with respect. I want. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I want to do something that isn't about profit margins and return on investment. Elena studied him, trying to see past the expensive suit and practice confidence. You have a daughter? Emma. She's 7. His expression transformed when he said her name, the coldness melting into something warm and raw. She asked me last week why I'm so mean to people who aren't rich. What did you tell her?
Nothing. I didn't have an answer.
Adrian's jaw tightened. Until you called me out in front of my business partners, I don't think I realized I'd become someone my daughter is ashamed of. The admission hung between them, honest and painful. I'm not a redemption project, Mr. Vaughn, Elena said finally, and I'm not interested in being someone's good deed. I know that. I'm not explaining this well. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect styling. Look, there's an international business competition coming up, the Grayson Prize. It's prestigious, well-connected, and the winner gets a full scholarship to their graduate program of choice, plus a funded startup opportunity. Applications are open for another 2 weeks. Elena knew about the Grayson Prize. Every international business student knew about it. It was also impossibly competitive and required resources she didn't have. I can't afford the application fee, she said bluntly. I'll cover it. No. Why not? Because then I'd owe you. Adrian leaned forward. You wouldn't owe me anything. Consider it reparations for being an entitled ass who insulted you in French. Despite herself, Elena felt a smile tugging at her lips. That's an expensive apology. I can afford it. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Elena looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the wealth and the walls he'd built, saw a man who'd forgotten how to be human and was desperately trying to remember. The point, she said slowly, is that I need to do this myself. I need to know that when I succeed, it's because I earned it, not because some billionaire felt guilty about his behavior. Even if refusing help means you might not get to compete at all? Even then, Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. These are all free workshops and mentorship programs connected to the Grayson Prize. No application fees, no financial barriers, just information and guidance. Elena scanned the list, her heart beating faster. These were resources she hadn't known existed. Why are you helping me? She asked. Because you were right, Adrian said simply. Dignity matters more than wealth. And because my daughter asked me if I thought you were smart and I had to tell her I didn't know, I dismissed you without ever bothering to see you as a person. That's not who I want to be. The restaurant continued buzzing around them, but Elena barely heard it. She was too busy recalculating, reimagining what might be possible. I need to think about it, she said finally. Of course. Adrian pulled out his wallet, but Elena stopped him. Are you planning to order food, Mr. Vaughn? Because if not, I should give this table to someone who will. That surprised a genuine laugh out of him. The ribeye, please, since you recommended it. Excellent choice. When she returned with his order, he was on a video call, his expression soft in a way she hadn't seen before. Elena caught a glimpse of a little girl with dark curls in her father's eyes before Adrian noticed her and quickly ended the call. Emma wanted to say goodnight, he explained, looking almost embarrassed. She's beautiful, Elena said, and meant it. She's everything. The words were simple but carried the weight of absolute truth. Her mother died when she was 3, car accident. Since then, it's just been us. I'm sorry. Me too. Adrian looked down at his plate. I threw myself into work afterward, told myself I was building something for Emma's future. But the truth is I was just running from the grief. And somewhere along the way I forgot that money can't buy the things that actually matter. Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she simply refilled his water and let the silence sit. Before he left that night, Adrian handed her a folder. The workshop information and a few other resources. No strings attached, Miss Brooks, just opportunities you've earned the right to explore. Elena took the folder carefully. Thank you. No, Adrian said quietly. Thank you for reminding me what integrity looks like. Over the following weeks, Elena and Adrian developed an unlikely friendship. He continued coming to the restaurant, always alone, always requesting her section. They talked about everything, her studies, his work, their respective responsibilities to the people who depended on them. He told her about Emma's struggles after her mother's death, the way grief manifested in a child too young to understand permanence. She told him about raising Kara, about being 22 and suddenly responsible for a teenager while drowning in debt. You're stronger than you know,
Adrian said one night over coffee after her shift. Or more stubborn, Elena replied. I'm not always sure there's a difference.
There is. Strength is knowing you could break but choosing not to. Stubbornness is refusing to admit you're breaking at all.
Elena absorbed that, turning her coffee cup in her hands. Which one are you? Neither. I already broke. I'm just trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together in a way that doesn't cut everyone around me. The Grayson Prize application consumed Elena's limited free time. Between work and classes and caring for Kara, she wrote and rewrote her proposal, attended the workshops Adrian had recommended, reached out to mentors she'd never known existed. True to his word, Adrian never offered financial help. But he did offer something more valuable, honest feedback. He reviewed her business plan with the same analytical precision he probably used for billion-dollar investments, pointing out weaknesses and helping her strengthen her arguments. You're too defensive here, he said one evening, pointing to a section of her proposal. You're trying to justify why your background makes you qualified instead of simply stating how your perspective creates unique value. Easy for you to say. You've never had to justify your right to be in the room. You're right, I haven't. But that doesn't make my observation less valid. Elena worked through the night, revising, refining. When she finally submitted her application at 11:59 p.m. on the deadline, her hands were shaking. I'm proud of you, Kara said, reading over her shoulder. Whatever happens. It won't be enough, Elena said. There will be applicants with better credentials, better connections, better everything. But none of them will be you. The waiting was excruciating. 6 weeks before they announced the finalists. 6 weeks of continuing to serve entitled businessmen their overpriced steaks while wondering if she'd missed her shot at something more. Adrian noticed her stress. You need to stop catastrophizing. I'm being realistic. You're being afraid. There's a difference, says the man who's never been afraid of anything. Adrian set down his fork, his expression serious. I'm afraid all the time, Elena. I'm afraid Emma will grow up thinking money equals worth. I'm afraid I've damaged her by being emotionally absent while she needed me most. I'm afraid that no matter how successful I become, I'll always be the kind of person who mocks waitresses in French because it makes me feel superior. The honesty in his voice stopped her cold. You're not that person anymore, she said quietly. How do you know? Because that person wouldn't be here, eating dinner in a restaurant he clearly doesn't need to visit, talking to a waitress he has no reason to care about. I have every reason to care about you. The words came out raw, unguarded. You made me want to be better. The air between them shifted, charged with something Elena wasn't ready to name. Mr. Vaughn, Adrian, please. Adrian, she corrected, testing the name. I appreciate everything you've done, the mentorship, the resources, the friendship. But I need you to understand that I can't. I'm not looking for anything beyond that. I know. He looked down at his hands. I'm not either, or at least I'm trying not to be. My life is complicated. Emma has to come first, and you deserve someone whose life isn't held together with business meetings and nanny schedules. I'm not looking for anyone, Elena said firmly. I'm looking for a degree and a career and a life where my sister doesn't have to worry about affording her insulin. I understand. But something had shifted anyway, something neither of them had asked for or wanted, but existed nonetheless. When the Grayson Prize finalists were announced 2 weeks later, Elena's name was on the list. She found out during her shift, checking her email on a break. The noise of the restaurant faded as she read the notification once, twice, 3 times. She'd made it to the finals. Marcus found her crying in the walk-in freezer 20 minutes later. Hey, what happened? I got in, Elena managed through tears. I actually got in. Got in where? She showed him the email. He whooped so loud the kitchen staff came running, and suddenly Elena was surrounded by people celebrating her success with the fierce joy of those who understood how rare it was. Adrian wasn't at the restaurant that night, but she texted him the news anyway. His response came immediately. I never doubted you. Congratulations, Elena. You earned this. The finals were in New York. 3 days of presentations, networking events, and interviews with judges who would determine the winner. Elena had never been to New York, had never stayed in a hotel, had never presented anything to anyone more important than her professors. The night before she left, Adrian showed up at the restaurant with a garment bag, What's this? Professional attire for the competition. Before you argue, I had my assistant order several options in what she estimated was your size. You're not accepting charity. You're accepting tools you need to compete on equal footing with people who have closets full of expensive clothes. Elena wanted to refuse, but she'd already seen the list of other finalists, seen their credentials and their university affiliations and their obvious privilege. Thank you, she said quietly. Elena? Adrian's voice stopped her as she was leaving. I know you need to do this yourself, but please know that I believe in you, completely. She nodded, not trusting her voice. New York was overwhelming. The hotel was nicer than anywhere she'd ever stayed. The other finalists were brilliant and connected and confident in ways that made Elena feel like an imposter. But then she remembered Adrian's words. Strength is knowing you could break, but choosing not to. She delivered her presentation with a steady voice, answered questions with the confidence of someone who'd lived the problem she was trying to solve. When the judges asked about her background, she didn't apologize for it. She owned it. My perspective comes from existing in spaces where I'm not supposed to exist, she told them. From understanding both sides of economic disparity because I've lived on the wrong side of it while serving people on the right side. That duality is my strength, not my weakness. She didn't win. A Stanford MBA with venture capital connections took first place. But Elena placed third, which came with a partial scholarship and mentorship opportunities and actual recognition from people who mattered in her field. She stood on that stage in a hotel ballroom in Manhattan, accepting an award in front of hundreds of people, and felt something shift inside her. Not victory, exactly, but validation. When the reporters asked about her journey, she thought carefully about her answer. Never judge someone by where they work or how quiet they are, she said. Some people carry extraordinary strength behind silent eyes. And sometimes the people who look down on you are the ones who most need to be reminded that dignity isn't for sale. She didn't mention Adrian by name, didn't need to. He'd been in the audience, though. She'd seen him slip in late, standing in the back with Emma beside him. After the ceremony, she found him outside the hotel, watching the New York traffic blur past. You didn't have to come all this way, Elena said. Yes, I did. Adrian turned to face her. I needed to see you succeed. Needed Emma to see that the world rewards talent and hard work, not just inherited wealth. Where is she? Getting ice cream with my assistant. I wanted to talk to you alone. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. I'm not good at this. At feelings, at vulnerability. I've spent years building walls because being open meant being hurt. Adrian, please let me finish. He took a breath. You changed me, Elena. Not because you tried to, but because you refused to let me continue being someone I was ashamed of. You demanded respect when I'd forgotten that respect was something owed to everyone, not earned through tax brackets. Elena's throat tightened. You changed yourself. I just held up a mirror. Maybe. But you showed me what was possible. Showed me that my daughter deserved a father who valued kindness over capital. And somewhere in those late-night conversations at a restaurant neither of us needed to be in, you became someone He trailed off, struggling. Someone you... what? Someone I care about, deeply. In ways that terrify me because I'm not sure I know how to care about someone without trying to fix them or control them or reduce them to a problem I can solve with money. The admission hung in the air between them, honest and fragile. I don't need fixing, Elena said quietly, and I definitely don't need controlling. I know, that's what makes this so complicated. What are you asking me, Adrian? He looked at her with those dark eyes that weren't cold anymore, just uncertain. I don't know. I don't have a plan. I just know that when Emma asks me about you, which she does constantly, I want to have an answer that's more than she's someone who made me want to be better. Elena thought about Kara, about her degree, about the life she was trying to build from fragments of possibility. Thought about Adrian and his complicated grief and the little girl who needed to see her father be good. I'm still going to finish school, she said. Still going to work at Lumiere until I don't have to anymore. Still going to put Kara first. I wouldn't want you to change any of that. And I'm not looking for someone to save me or make my life easier. I'm looking for someone who understands that my struggles are mine to face. I understand that. Do you? Elena challenged. Because every instinct you have is probably telling you to write a check or make a call or fix things. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. You're right. That is every instinct I have. But I'm learning that the best way to support someone isn't to remove their obstacles. It's to stand beside them while they overcome those obstacles themselves. Elena smiled despite the tears forming in her eyes. That's a very expensive lesson for a billionaire to learn. Worth every penny. They stood there on a New York sidewalk, two people from different worlds, who'd somehow ended up in the same moment. And Elena made a decision. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay, let's figure this out. Whatever this is. No promises, no expectations, just seeing where it goes. Adrian's smile was genuine and warm, and completely without the coldness she'd seen that first night. I'd like that.
But, Elena added firmly, if you ever mock someone in a language you think they don't understand again, I'm walking away and never looking back. Deal. Emma bounded over then, chocolate ice cream smeared on her face, and grabbed her father's hand. Is this the waitress who made you nice again? Adrian laughed, embarrassed. Emma, yes, Elena said, crouching down to Emma's level. I'm the waitress. My name is Elena. Daddy says you're the smartest person he knows.
Your daddy is biased. What's biased? It means he likes me too much to be objective about my intelligence. Emma considered this seriously. Do you like him too much too? Elena glanced up at Adrian, saw him watching her with barely concealed hope, and felt something warm settle in her chest. I'm working on it, she told Emma honestly. The little girl beamed. Good. He's been less mean since he met you. On the flight back to Chicago, Elena thought about everything that had changed in the past few months. She was still a waitress at Lumiere, still struggling with tuition and medical bills and the endless mathematics of survival. But she was also a Grayson Prize finalist, also someone with connections and opportunities she'd earned, also someone who'd made a billionaire remember how to be human, and maybe, possibly, if they could figure out how to navigate their very different lives, she was also someone who might let herself care about a man who'd learned that dignity mattered more than wealth. The story wasn't finished. There would be more struggles, more obstacles, more moments where she'd wonder if any of this was worth it. But standing on that stage in New York, looking out at a crowd that finally saw her as something more than silent hands serving food, Elena had felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. And that, she thought, was worth more than any amount of money Adrian Vaughn could ever offer. The mentorship meeting started 3 weeks after New York, awkward and formal in a way that made Elena want to laugh. They met at coffee shops near campus, Adrian arriving in his town car while Elena showed up on the Blue Line smelling faintly of the restaurant's kitchen grease no matter how many times she washed her uniform. The first meeting, Adrian brought a leather portfolio and an agenda printed on heavy cardstock. Really? Elena said, sliding into the booth across from him. An agenda? I thought structure would be helpful. You thought wrong. She ordered black coffee from the waitress, ignoring Adrian's suggestion that she try the specialty drinks. I don't need structure. I need to figure out how to leverage third place into actual opportunities. Adrian set aside his agenda. Fair enough. What's the biggest obstacle you're facing right now? Besides the fact that every internship posting requires experience I don't have and connections I'll never get? Yes. Besides that. Elena pulled out her laptop, the screen held together with electrical tape after Kara had accidentally dropped it last month. Networking. Everyone keeps telling me to network, but I don't know how to walk up to strangers at professional events and pretend we have something in common. You're doing it right now. You're not a stranger, you're... Elena trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. I'm what? Complicated, she settled on. You're complicated. Adrian's mouth quirked into something almost like a smile. That's diplomatic. Over the next hour, they mapped out a strategy that felt less like charity and more like collaboration. Adrian would introduce her to people in his network, but Elena would do the actual work of building those relationships. He'd recommend her for opportunities, but she'd have to earn them once the door opened. I can't promise you'll like everyone I introduce you to, Adrian warned. Some of them are worse than I was when we met. Were? Am. Some of them are worse than I am. Present tense noted. Elena closed her laptop. Why are you doing this? And don't say it's because I made you want to be better. I need the real reason. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, stirring his untouched coffee. Emma asked me last week what success means. I told her it meant building something valuable. She asked if her mom was successful, and I didn't know what to say. Catherine was a social worker. She made $38,000 a year and loved every minute of it. By my definition of success, she was a failure. But she was the best person I've ever known. The grief in his voice was old but not healed. Elena recognized it. She carried the same kind for her father. So you're doing this to honor her memory? I'm doing this because Emma deserves to see that success can mean different things. That helping someone doesn't always require a transaction. That maybe the best way to honor Catherine is to become someone she wouldn't have been ashamed to know. Elena reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. She'd be proud of you. You didn't know her. I know you're trying. That counts for something. The first networking event Adrian dragged her to was exactly as awful as Elena had feared. Held in a downtown hotel ballroom, packed with people in expensive suits discussing quarterly earnings and market disruptions, it felt like being back at Lumiere, except everyone was standing and she couldn't hide behind her server persona. I can't do this, Elena whispered to Adrian as they approached the entrance. Yes, you can. Everyone here went to schools that cost more than my parents made in their entire lives. They're going to know I don't belong. Adrian stopped walking, turning to face her. You placed third in the Grayson Prize. You speak 5 languages. You're finishing your degree while working full-time and raising your sister. You belong here more than half these people who had everything handed to them. You had everything handed to you. Exactly, which is how I know the difference between earned success and inherited luck. He adjusted her collar slightly, a gesture so natural it surprised them both. You've earned this, Elena. Now go make them see it. The evening was brutal. Elena stumbled through conversations with venture capitalists who looked through her, tech executives who asked which school she attended, and lost interest when she said Roosevelt, finance directors who assumed she was someone's assistant. She was ready to leave after 20 minutes when a woman in her 50s approached with genuine interest in her eyes. You're Elena Brooks, aren't you? Third place Grayson Prize? Yes, Elena managed, caught off guard. Margaret Chen. I judged your presentation in New York. She extended her hand warmly. Your proposal on microfinance accessibility in underserved communities was the most innovative thing I've seen in years. What are you planning to do with it? For the first time all evening, Elena relaxed. This she could talk about. This she knew. 45 minutes later, she had Margaret's card, an invitation to speak at an upcoming conference, and a referral to a nonprofit that was hiring program managers. See, Adrian said when she found him near the bar. You belong here. One person doesn't count. It's one more than you had an hour ago. Elena couldn't argue with that logic. The problem started when she arrived at Lumiere for her shift the next evening and found Sarah waiting with an uncomfortable expression. Corporate called, Sarah said without preamble. Someone complained that you're using the restaurant to make professional connections with customers. Elena's stomach dropped. What? Apparently one of the regulars saw you at some business event with Adrian Vaughn and reported it as inappropriate conduct. They're saying you're soliciting customers for personal gain. That's insane. Adrian and I are friends. He's mentoring me. Sarah held up her hands. I believe you, but corporate doesn't care about context. They care about liability. They're putting you on notice. One more complaint and you're fired. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. She needed this job, needed it desperately. This isn't fair. I know, but fair doesn't matter when some rich asshole decides you're getting above your station. The shift passed in a fog. Elena went through the motions mechanically, taking orders and delivering food while her mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Without Lumiere's income, she couldn't cover rent and tuition. Without tuition, she couldn't finish her degree. Without her degree, all of this had been for nothing. She was clearing table 12 when Adrian walked in. Elena's professional mask slipped for just a second, long enough for him to see the panic in her eyes. He immediately requested a table in someone else's section. During her break, she found him waiting by the service entrance. What happened? He demanded. Elena explained about the complaint, about being put on notice, about the precariousness of her entire situation. Who complained? Give me a name and I'll... You'll what? Call them? Use your money and influence to make it go away? Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid. So what? You're just going to accept this? What choice do I have? I need this job, Adrian. I can't afford to fight corporate over something that's technically against policy, even if it's completely ridiculous. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Okay, what do you need from me? Distance. At least here. At least where people can see us and make assumptions. For how long? I don't know, until I finish my degree, until I find something else, until people stop caring about a waitress who dared to have ambitions. The hurt that flashed across Adrian's face was quickly masked, but Elena caught it. I understand. Do you? No, he admitted. But I'm trying to. They stood there in the alley behind Lumiere, surrounded by dumpsters and the smell of old grease, and Elena felt something precious slipping away. This is why I didn't want help, she said quietly. Because help always comes with consequences I can't control. This isn't your fault, isn't it? I let myself get close to you. Let myself believe that maybe I could have both, the mentorship and the job and the degree, but the world doesn't work that way for people like me. People like you? People who don't have safety nets. People who can't afford to take risks because one wrong move means losing everything. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. Then let me be your safety net. No. The word came out harder than Elena intended. That's not who I am. I can't be someone who needs rescuing. It's not rescuing, it's partnership. It's you trying to fix a problem with money because that's the only solution you know. Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. I need to do this myself, Adrian, even if it takes longer, even if it's harder, especially because it's harder. She left him standing in the alley and went back to finish her shift. The distance was easier in theory than practice. Elena stopped attending networking events, stopped answering Adrian's texts beyond brief, polite responses, stopped allowing herself to think about what might have been developing between them before reality intervened. At home, Kara noticed immediately. You're miserable, she said one night while they were eating cheap pasta at their kitchen table. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. What happened with the billionaire? Nothing happened. We're just not... It's complicated. Everything about your life is complicated. Kara pushed food around her plate. But you were happy for a minute there. I heard you laughing on the phone with him. I saw you actually excited about something besides getting me to my doctor appointments on time. The observation stung because it was true. Sometimes happy doesn't matter. Sometimes you have to choose practical. That's the saddest thing you've ever said. Elena didn't have an answer for that. 2 weeks later, the nonprofit Margaret Chen had recommended called with an interview. The position was perfect. Program manager for a microfinance initiative, working with exactly the communities Elena had focused on in her Grayson proposal. The salary was modest, but livable. The mission aligned with everything she cared about. She wanted it so badly she could taste it. The interview went well until the final question. We see you're currently working in food service. Can you explain the gap between your educational background and your current employment? Elena had prepared for this, had practiced the diplomatic version of her story that emphasized responsibility and dedication without sounding like a sob story. But sitting across from 3 interviewers in business casual, she suddenly couldn't do it. Couldn't reduce her father's death and her mother's breakdown and Kara's diagnosis into a neat narrative that made her unemployment gap palatable. My father died when I was 22, she heard herself say. Medical debt. My mother couldn't handle it. I took custody of my 14-year-old sister who has type 1 diabetes. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat while finishing my undergraduate degree. I lost my scholarship when I had to take a semester off for my sister's diagnosis. I work at Lumiere because it pays better than retail and has flexible hours around my class schedule. There's no gap in my employment. There's just a gap between what I've had to do and what people expect someone with my education to have done. The interviewers exchanged glances. Elena waited for the polite rejection. Instead, the woman in the center smiled. That's exactly the kind of perspective we need for this position. When can you start? Elena walked out of that interview in a daze. She'd gotten the job, actually gotten it. The salary was enough to cover rent and basic expenses, enough to reduce her Lumiere shifts to part-time until she finished her degree. She called Kara first. You did it, her sister screamed into the phone. You actually did it. I actually did it, Elena repeated, letting herself believe it. She wanted to call Adrian, wanted to hear his voice, wanted to share this victory with someone who understood how hard she'd worked for it. But the distance she'd created stood between them like a wall. Instead, she sent a text. Got the nonprofit job, starting in 2 weeks. His response came immediately. I never doubted you. Congratulations. Then after a pause, I miss talking to you. Elena stared at those 4 words for a long time before typing. I miss talking to you too. Then stop avoiding me. I'm not avoiding you. I'm being practical. Practical is overrated. Despite herself, Elena smiled. Says the billionaire. Says the man who hasn't had a decent conversation in 3 weeks because the only person who calls him on his bullshit decided she needs to do everything alone. I don't need to do everything alone. I need to do this particular thing alone. Why? Elena thought about how to explain it, how to make him understand. Because if I don't, I'll never know if I succeeded because I was good enough or because you smoothed the path. And I need to know I'm good enough. Need it more than I need help. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. You're more than good enough. But I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. Thank you. Can I at least take you to dinner to celebrate? Somewhere that's not Lumiere? Elena hesitated. Maintaining distance was smart, safe, practical. But she was tired of being practical. Okay. Really? Really? But nowhere expensive. And you're not allowed to talk about networking or opportunities or anything work-related. Deal. What are we allowed to talk about? I'll let you know when I figure it out. They met at a Thai restaurant in Elena's neighborhood, the kind of place with plastic chairs and amazing food and prices that didn't require a second mortgage. Adrian looked completely out of place in his tailored suit, but he didn't seem to care. Emma's been asking about you, he said after they ordered. How is she? Convinced that you're a princess in disguise. I blame too many Disney movies. Elena laughed. I'm definitely not a princess. I don't know. You did humble a billionaire with a single sentence. That seems pretty royal. That was less princess and more fed-up waitress who'd reached her limit. Still counts. Adrian's expression softened. She misses you, keeps asking when you're coming over again. I've never been over. I know. But she's decided you should be. 7-year-olds are very certain about these things. The food arrived, giving Elena time to process that. The idea of meeting Emma properly, of stepping into Adrian's actual life instead of existing in these neutral spaces, felt significant. Weighted. I don't want to confuse her, Elena said carefully. She's already lost her mother. She doesn't need unstable adults drifting in and out of her life. Is that what you think you are? Unstable and drifting? I think I'm figuring things out. And I think a 7-year-old doesn't need to be part of that process. Adrian set down his fork. What are we doing, Elena? Eating pad thai. You know what I mean. She did. And she'd been avoiding thinking about it because thinking about it required acknowledging feelings she wasn't ready to acknowledge. I don't know, she admitted. I know I like talking to you. I know you make me laugh when everything feels impossible. I know that when something good happens, you're the person I want to tell. But I'm still figuring out who I am beyond survival mode, beyond being the person who takes care of everyone else. And I'm not sure I have room in my life for something complicated. What if I'm willing to wait while you figure it out? That's not fair to you. Shouldn't I get to decide what's fair to me? Elena met his eyes across the cheap plastic table. What do you want from this? From me? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't thought about wanting anything beyond financial security and Emma's happiness in years. But then you appeared, and suddenly I'm thinking about things I'd written off as impossible. Companionship, partnership. Someone who sees me as more than a bank account or a business opportunity. I do see you as more than that. I know. That's why this terrifies me. He reached across the table, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. I'm not good at this. At being open. At admitting I need someone. Catherine was the last person I let myself need, and when I lost her, I swore I'd never put myself in that position again. Elena looked at his hand, at the vulnerability in the gesture. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. I'm not good at this either, she said. At letting people help. At trusting that accepting support doesn't make me weak. At believing I deserve good things. We're quite a pair. We really are. They sat like that for a while, hands linked across the table. 2 damaged people trying to figure out if healing looked like being together or being apart. I start the new job in 2 weeks, Elena said eventually. After that, my life is going to change. Different schedule, different priorities. I don't know what I'll have left over for anything else. Okay. Okay? I'm not going anywhere, Elena. Whether you have time for me or not, whether this becomes something or stays undefined, I'm not disappearing. You're stuck with me as a friend minimum. That's very persistent of you. I'm a billionaire. Persistence is kind of our thing.
Elena laughed despite herself. I really hate that you're funny. Why?
Because it makes it harder to keep you at a safe distance. Good. The night Emma got sick, Elena was halfway through a closing shift at Lumiere when Adrian's call came through. I need help. His voice was strained, panicked, in a way she'd never heard. Emma's fever is 104 and won't come down. The nanny is off tonight and I don't know what to do. Elena didn't hesitate. I'm coming. What's your address? She told Sarah it was an emergency, grabbed her coat, and was in an Uber before Adrian finished giving directions. His home was exactly what she'd expected, a Lincoln Park mansion with more square footage than her entire apartment building. But she barely noticed the architecture as Adrian opened the door, looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. She's upstairs. I gave her fever reducer, but it's not working, and she's saying her head hurts, and breathe, Elena commanded, already heading for the stairs. Where's her room? Emma's bedroom was painted soft lavender with white furniture and more stuffed animals than any child could reasonably need. The little girl was curled in bed, face flushed, breathing shallow. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her hand to Emma's forehead. Definitely hot, but not dangerously so. Hi, Emma. Remember me? From New York? The girl's eyes fluttered open. The Princess Waitress. That's right. Your dad called because you're not feeling well. Can you tell me what hurts? My head and my tummy and everything. Elena checked her watch. When did your dad give you medicine? I don't know. A long time ago. Adrian appeared in the doorway. An hour and 15 minutes. Okay. She needs fluids and a cool compress. Do you have a washcloth? Over the next 2 hours, Elena sat with Emma, telling stories and monitoring her temperature while Adrian hovered anxiously. The fever broke around midnight, Emma finally falling into peaceful sleep. You can stop pacing now, Elena said quietly, joining Adrian in the hallway. She's going to be fine. Probably just a virus. I panicked. He ran a hand through his hair. Catherine would have known exactly what to do. She was so calm in situations like this. I fall apart. You didn't fall apart. You called for help. That's different. I called you. Yes. Why did I call you? The question wasn't rhetorical. He genuinely seemed confused by his own choice. Elena understood the confusion. Because you trust me, and because sometimes you need someone who will just show up without judging you for not having all the answers. Is that what you did? Showed up? I'm standing in your ridiculously large hallway at midnight, so yes, I showed up. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Stay, please. Just until morning. I don't want to be alone with this. It was the most honest thing he'd ever asked for. Not help with business or connections or opportunities, just presence, just companionship through difficulty. Okay, Elena said, I'll stay. She slept, barely, in the guest room down the hall from Emma, listening for sounds of distress that never came. When she woke around 6, the house was quiet except for distant clattering from the kitchen. She found Adrian making pancakes with the uncertain movements of someone who rarely cooked. You don't have a chef? Elena asked from the doorway. I gave staff the week off. Emma had spring break, and I wanted time with just us. He flipped a pancake with more enthusiasm than skill. These are terrible, aren't they? I haven't tasted them yet. But you can tell by looking. Elena moved beside him, assessing the situation. You're using too much heat, and the batter's too thick. Here. She adjusted the stove temperature, added a splash of milk to the batter, and demonstrated the proper flip technique. Their shoulders brushed as she worked, a casual intimacy that should have felt awkward but didn't. You're good at this, Adrian observed. I've made a lot of pancakes for Kara over the years. You develop a system. Everything with you is a system. I've noticed that. You've systematized survival. It's the only way to get through it. If I stopped and thought about everything all at once, I'd never get out of bed. Is that what happened to your mother? She stopped being able to systematize it? Elena was surprised by the insight. Yeah, the debt, the grief, the responsibility of raising a teenager alone. It all hit her at once, and she just broke. I found her in the bathroom with a bottle of pills. Got her to the hospital in time, but after that, she couldn't handle being a parent anymore. Said she loved us, but couldn't be what we needed. I'm sorry. Oh, me too. Elena plated the improved pancakes. But it taught me that you can't rely on other people to hold themselves together. You have to be your own stability. Is that why you push help away? Because you learned you can't depend on anyone? Probably. That and the fact that accepting help means admitting I can't do everything alone, which feels like failure. It's not failure. It's being human. Before Elena could respond, small footsteps sounded on the stairs. Emma appeared, looking significantly better than she had the night before. You stayed, she exclaimed, running to hug Elena with unselfconscious enthusiasm. I did. How are you feeling, princess? Better. Is that pancakes? Daddy never makes pancakes. I made them, Adrian protested. Elena made them, Emma corrected, already climbing into a chair at the kitchen island. Daddy doesn't know how to make anything except sad sandwiches. Elena bit back a laugh. Sad sandwiches? They're just bread and cheese. No love. Sandwiches don't require love, Adrian argued, but he was smiling. Everything requires love, Emma said, with the certainty of someone who'd clearly heard that from her mother and held it as gospel. They ate breakfast together, the morning sunlight streaming through windows that probably cost more than Elena's car. Emma chattered about school and her friends and a book she was reading, occasionally interrupting herself to ask Elena questions about everything from her favorite color to whether she liked dinosaurs. She's interrogating you, Adrian said apologetically. I can tell. Elena answered another question about her favorite food. It's fine. I remember being 7 and thinking adults were mysterious creatures who needed investigating. Were we mysterious? Terrifying, mostly. I thought all adults had everything figured out. Took me years to realize nobody knows what they're doing. Some of us really don't know what we're doing, Adrian said, looking at his daughter with obvious affection and equally obvious uncertainty. After breakfast, Elena insisted on cleaning up despite Adrian's protests. Emma helped by telling them both where everything went and providing running commentary on her father's organizational failures. He puts the plates in the wrong cabinet, she confided to Elena in a stage whisper. Mom always said he was organizationally challenged. I can hear you, Adrian called from across the kitchen. I know. That's why it's called constructive criticism. Elena laughed so hard she had to set down the plate she was washing. Where did you learn that phrase? My teacher says it when she tells us our art isn't good, but she says it means she's helping us get better. Your teacher is very diplomatic. What's diplomatic? It means she's nice even when she's being honest. Emma considered this. Like how you were diplomatic when you told those mean men at the restaurant that they were being rude? Adrian's head snapped up. How do you know about that? I heard you telling Grandma on the phone. You said a brave waitress called you out for being mean, and it changed your whole life. The kitchen went quiet. Adrian looked mortified. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks. That's not exactly what I said, Adrian managed. Yes, it is. You said she made you want to be a better man. Emma, are you dating her? Is that why she's here? We're not, Adrian started. We're friends, Elena said firmly. Your dad helped me with some work stuff, and I helped him last night when you were sick. Friends help each other. Emma looked between them skeptically. Daddy doesn't have friends. He has business associates. How do you know that phrase? Adrian asked weakly. Because that's what you always say when people call. This is a business associate. You never say friend. Elena met Adrian's eyes across the kitchen and saw her own thoughts reflected there. This child saw too much, understood too much. Well, I'm his friend, Elena said. Is that okay with you? Emma appeared to think about this very seriously. Okay, but only if you promise to come back. Daddy's sad when people leave and don't come back. The casual observation hit like a physical blow. Adrian turned away, suddenly very interested in putting away the milk. Elena knelt down to Emma's level. I promise that if I leave, I'll tell you why, and it won't be because I don't care, okay? Okay. Emma hugged her again, fierce and quick. I like you. You're not scared of Daddy like other people are.
Why would I be scared of your dad?
Because he's rich and important and people get nervous around him, but you don't. You just tell him when he's wrong. Somebody has to, Elena said, glancing at Adrian, who was now openly listening to this conversation. That's what Mom used to say. Emma's face lit up. She said Daddy needed someone who wasn't impressed by his money. The parallel was clearly not lost on Adrian, whose expression had gone complicated and distant. Elena stood, sensing the shift in mood. I should probably go. I have class this afternoon and I need to change.
I'll call you a car, Adrian said quietly. The blue line is fine. Elena's.
She recognized the tone. Not demanding, but asking. Asking her to let him do this one small thing. Okay, thank you. While they waited for the car, Emma showed Elena her room in exhaustive detail, including every stuffed animal's name and backstory. Adrian watched from the doorway, quiet and thoughtful. You're good with her, he said when Emma ran off to find a specific toy she wanted Elena to see. She's easy to be good with. She's smart and funny and real. She likes you. I like her too. That's not what I mean. Adrian stepped closer, voice low. She doesn't warm up to people easily. After Catherine died, she went through a phase where she wouldn't talk to anyone except me and the nanny. It took her therapist 6 months to get her to open up, but with you, she just blooms. Kids are perceptive. They know who's genuine. Is that what you are with me? Genuine? Elena met his eyes. I don't know how to be anything else. The car arrived before she could say anything more. Emma made her promise to come back soon, extracting a pinky swear and everything. Adrian walked her to the door, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. Thank you, he said, for last night, for this morning, for being patient with Emma. You don't have to thank me for that. I do, though. You didn't have to come, didn't have to stay, didn't have to make pancakes or answer 1,000 questions or promise to come back. I wanted to. Why? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to address. Because, Elena said finally, you asked for help without trying to hide that you needed it. And because Emma deserves to have people in her life who show up. And because despite all my speeches about needing to do things alone, apparently I'm not very good at practicing what I preach. Adrian smiled, small and genuine. None of us are. In the car, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Kara. Where are you? You didn't come home last night and I was worried. At Adrian's. Emma was sick. The response was immediate. OMG, you stayed over? In the guest room. Nothing happened. Sure, Jan. I'm serious. It was just helping out a friend you have feelings for. Elena stared at those words, at the truth she'd been avoiding. She did have feelings for Adrian, despite the complications, despite the differences in their lives, despite every practical reason not to. Maybe, she typed back. But it doesn't matter. Why not? Because some things are too complicated to work. Or maybe, Kara replied, you're too scared to try. Elena didn't answer that. Couldn't answer it honestly without admitting that her little sister might be right. The nonprofit job started on a Tuesday morning in late April, and Elena arrived 30 minutes early because being late to your first day felt like tempting fate. The office was in a converted warehouse in Pilsen, all exposed brick and secondhand furniture that had clearly been donated by organizations with bigger budgets. Her desk was smaller than the prep station at Lumiere, but it was hers. You must be Elena, a woman about her age said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. I'm Rachel, program coordinator. We're desk neighbors, which means you're stuck listening to me complain about our database system approximately 40 times a day. Only 40? I'm trying to cut back. Rachel handed her one of the cups. Fair warning, the coffee here is terrible. There's a decent place 2 blocks down if you want to make a run before the 9 a.m. staff meeting. Elena liked her immediately. The morning was a blur of introductions, system passwords, and policy documents that all blurred together. By lunch, her head was spinning with information about grant cycles and outcome metrics and community partnership protocols. It gets easier, Rachel promised, stealing half of Elena's sandwich from the break room. Give it 2 weeks and you'll be fluent in nonprofit nonsense. Is that what we call it? Nonprofit nonsense? Only amongst ourselves. To donors, it's mission-critical strategic initiatives. Rachel grinned. You'll learn the translation guide soon enough. The work itself was exactly what Elena had hoped for. She spent her afternoons calling community organizations, building partnerships, identifying barriers to microfinance access in neighborhoods that looked a lot like the one she'd grown up in. It felt purposeful in a way, serving overpriced steaks never had. But it also paid exactly as much as she'd expected, which meant keeping her part-time shifts at Lumiere just to cover Kara's medical expenses and the small buffer of savings she was desperately trying to build. "You're killing yourself," Kara said one night, watching Elena stumble through the door at 11 p.m. after a double shift. "You worked a full day at the nonprofit, then went straight to the restaurant. That's insane." "It's temporary." "You always say that." "Because it's always true. Once I finish my degree, once I get promoted, once we build up savings." Once. Kara threw up her hands. "What if once never comes? What if you burn out before you get there?" Elena didn't have an answer for that because she'd been asking herself the same question. Adrian noticed too. He'd started texting her daily, usually just small observations or terrible jokes, but the evening after her first week at the nonprofit, he called. "You sound exhausted," he said without preamble. "Hello to you too." "I'm serious, Elena. When was the last time you slept more than 5 hours?" She did the math. "I don't know. Tuesday? It's Saturday." "Then I guess Tuesday." Elena kicked off her shoes, too tired to care that they landed somewhere in the general direction of the closet. "I'm fine, Adrian." "You're not fine. You're working 2 jobs while finishing your degree. That's not sustainable." "It's what I have to do." "It doesn't have to be." His voice was careful, measured. "I could help with—" "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "We've been through this." "I know, but—" "No buts. I need to do this my way." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "What if your way is running you into the ground?" "Then at least I'll hit the ground on my own terms." "That's the most stubborn thing I've ever heard." "You've known me for months. This can't be surprising." She heard him sigh, could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when frustrated. "Emma wants you to come to her birthday party next week." The subject change was deliberate, and Elena was grateful for it. "Her birthday's next week?" "Saturday. She's turning 8, and apparently the only thing she wants is for you to be there. She's been talking about it nonstop since you stayed over when she was sick." Elena's heart clenched. "Adrian, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I don't want her getting attached to someone who might not be a permanent fixture in her life." "You're already a fixture in her life. She asks about you constantly, wants to know what you're doing, if you're eating enough, whether you've read the book she recommended." "She recommended a book?" "Something about a girl who lives in a bookstore. I ordered it for you. It should arrive Monday." Elena didn't know what to do with that information. Didn't know how to process a 7-year-old thinking about her enough to recommend books. "I'm working that Saturday," she said finally. "Take the day off." "I can't afford to take days off." "Then let me cover your shift." "That's not how jobs work, Adrian. You can't just pay someone to not work." "I can. I absolutely can. I could buy the entire restaurant if that's what it takes to get you to take a day off. Please don't buy the restaurant." "I'm not making any promises." Despite her exhaustion, Elena smiled. "You're ridiculous." "I'm determined. There's a difference." His voice softened. "Emma would really love to have you there. And so would I." The admission hung in the air between them, honest and unguarded. "What time?" Elena heard herself ask. 2 p.m. Very casual, just family and a few of her school friends. No pressure. "Everything with you is pressure." "This isn't. I promise. Just cake and pin the tail on the donkey and probably too much sugar. Very low stakes." Elena knew it wasn't low stakes, knew that showing up to Emma's birthday meant something, signified something, crossed a line she'd been carefully avoiding. But Kara was right. She was scared. Scared of wanting things, scared of letting people in, scared of building something that could be taken away. "Okay," she said. "I'll be there." Finding a birthday present for a 7-year-old she barely knew but desperately wanted to impress turned out to be harder than Elena anticipated. She spent her lunch breaks for 3 days wandering through toy stores, feeling completely out of her depth. "What does an 8-year-old even want?" she asked Rachel, who had 2 kids of her own. "At that age? Usually something sparkly or something that makes noise, preferably both. But you said she likes books? Her dad mentioned it. Rachel's eyes lit up with the knowing look of someone who sensed a story. Her dad, huh? This wouldn't be the billionaire mentor you've mentioned exactly 0 times, but Kara told me all about? Elena made a mental note to kill her sister. It's not like that. Sure it's not. You're just casually attending his daughter's birthday party. It's complicated. The best things usually are. Elena eventually settled on a hardcover collection of fairy tales from different cultures and a booklight shaped like a cat. Nothing extravagant, nothing that screamed, "I'm trying too hard," but thoughtful enough to show she'd paid attention. The party was at Adrian's house, which meant Elena spent the entire Uber ride trying not to throw up from nerves. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a nice blouse, something that looked put together without being formal. Emma answered the door herself, wearing a princess dress and a paper crown that was slightly crooked. "You came!" She launched herself at Elena with the full-body enthusiasm only children possessed. "I told Daddy you'd come, but he said maybe you'd be too busy, but I knew you wouldn't miss it." "I wouldn't miss it for anything," Elena said, meaning it. The house was full of children running in circles, parents clustered in small groups making polite conversation, and decorations that definitely hadn't come from a party store. Adrian had clearly hired someone, probably multiple someones, to make this perfect. He found her in the chaos within minutes, looking relieved and nervous in equal measure. "You made it." "I said I would." "I know, but I wasn't sure." He trailed off, seeming uncertain how to finish that sentence. "You weren't sure I'd actually show up?" "Something like that." Emma tugged on Elena's hand. "Come meet my friends, and then you have to see my cake. It has a castle on it." The afternoon passed in a blur of sugar-fueled games and children's laughter. Elena found herself genuinely enjoying it, caught up in Emma's joy and the simple pleasure of celebration. Adrian's mother was there too, an elegant woman in her 60s who watched Elena with barely concealed curiosity. "So you're the famous waitress," she said during a quiet moment while the kids demolished the castle cake. "I prefer Elena, but yes." Adrian's mother smiled, and it reminded Elena of her son's rare, genuine smiles. "He talks about you constantly. I was beginning to think you were fictional." "Sorry to disappoint." "On the contrary, I'm relieved to find you're real and apparently capable of managing my son's stubbornness, which is no small feat." "I don't manage him. I just call him out when he's being impossible." "Exactly. That's what I said." She patted Elena's hand. "Catherine used to do the same thing. Adrian needs someone who doesn't let him get away with hiding behind his money and his walls." The comparison to Catherine should have felt uncomfortable, but instead it felt like an unexpected blessing. When it was time for presents, Emma opened each one with exaggerated excitement, thanking every guest with practiced politeness. But when she got to Elena's gift, something shifted in her expression. "Fairy tales from around the world," she read aloud, then looked up with genuine wonder. "How did you know these were the exact ones I wanted?" "I didn't. I just thought you might like them." Emma hugged the books to her chest. "They're perfect. Thank you." It was such a small thing, a $20 book and a cat-shaped reading light, but Emma's reaction made it feel monumental. After the party wound down and the other guests left, Adrian convinced Elena to stay for dinner. His mother joined them, along with Emma, who was still wearing her crown and clutching her new books. "Tell me about your new job," Adrian's mother said over pasta that was definitely prepared by a professional chef. "Adrian mentioned you're working in microfinance?" Elena explained the work, the communities they served, the barriers they were trying to break down. She found herself talking more openly than usual, caught up in the genuine interest from both Adrian and his mother. "That's important work," his mother said. "More important than most of what happens in my son's world, if I'm being honest." "Mother," Adrian protested, "it's true. You shuffle money around and make more money. Elena actually helps people." "I help people too." "You help rich people get richer. It's not quite the same thing." Elena hid her smile behind her water glass as Adrian looked appropriately chastised. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Elena her favorite books, which turned into a full tour of her personal library, an entire room devoted to books organized by color, because it looks prettier that way. "Your dad said you like to read," Elena said, scanning the shelves. "Reading is the best. You can go anywhere without leaving your room. Mommy used to say that." Emma pulled out a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. This was her favorite when she was little.
Daddy reads it to me sometimes, but he gets sad at the ending. It is a sad ending. But it's also happy. Charlotte saved Wilbur and her babies lived, and Wilbur never forgot her. Daddy says remembering people is how they stay alive.
The wisdom in those words, clearly repeated from conversations with her father about grief, made Elena's throat tight. Your daddy's right. Do you remember your daddy? The question caught Elena off guard. Yes, he died when I was in college. Does remembering him make you sad or happy? Elena thought about it honestly. Both. Mostly happy now, but it took a long time to get there. It's been 5 years since Mommy died, and Daddy's still mostly sad. I think he's getting a little bit happy now, though, since he met you. Before Elena could respond to that, Adrian appeared in the doorway. Emma, it's bedtime. Stop interrogating Elena. I'm not interrogating, I'm having a conversation. It's 8:30. Conversations end at 8:30 on school nights. Emma sighed dramatically but hugged Elena goodnight. Will you come back again? Not just for parties?
If your dad doesn't mind. He doesn't mind, he likes you. He smiles different when you're here.
Emma? Adrian's voice held a warning. It's true. You smile like you mean it instead of the grown-up smile you use for business associates. After Emma was in bed, Adrian and Elena found themselves alone in his study, surrounded by expensive furniture and the kind of silence that felt weighted with unspoken things. I'm sorry about Emma, Adrian said. She's decided you're her personal mission or something. She's wonderful. She's nosy. She's perceptive. There's a difference. Adrian poured himself a drink, something amber in a crystal glass, and offered one to Elena, who declined. She's not wrong, you know, what she said about smiling. Adrian, let me say this. He set down his glass, hands braced on the desk between them. I know you need space. I know you need to do things your way, at your own pace. I know you're not looking for someone to complicate your life when you're barely keeping all the pieces together. I know all of that. But I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to talk to you about everything and nothing. Can't stop imagining what it would be like if you were here more. If Emma could count on seeing you, if I could count on seeing you. Elena's heart was racing. What are you asking me? I don't know, maybe nothing. Maybe just to stop pretending that what's happening between us is purely friendship or mentorship or whatever safe label we've been using. And if I'm not ready for it to be more than that, then I'll wait. I'm good at waiting. You're really not. You're possibly the most impatient person I've ever met. Adrian smiled despite himself. Okay, I'm terrible at waiting, but I'll learn. For you, I'll learn. Elena stood, moving to the window that overlooked his immaculate backyard. The pool was lit from below, casting wavering light across the stone patio. It was beautiful and perfect and completely foreign to everything she knew. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared of wanting this and having it fall apart. Scared of Emma getting attached to me and then me disappointing her. Scared that you'll wake up one day and realize I'm just a waitress from the wrong side of Chicago who doesn't fit into your world. Adrian crossed the room to stand beside her, close but not touching. You're not just anything, and my world is empty and cold and meaningless except for Emma. You make it feel like maybe there's more to life than quarterly earnings and investment portfolios. That's a lot of pressure to put on a person. I'm not asking you to fix me or save me or complete me or whatever romantic nonsense people say. I'm just asking if maybe we could try. Try to see if this thing between us could be something real. Elena looked at their reflections in the window, two people from completely different worlds standing in the same room, wanting the same impossible thing. I don't know how to do this, she said. How to let someone in without losing myself in the process. We'll figure it out together. No expectations, no timelines, just trying. What about Emma? Emma already loves you. That ship has sailed. What if we try and it doesn't work? Then we'll handle it like adults. We'll be honest with her, we'll make sure she knows it's not her fault, and we'll do our best not to hurt each other in the process. Elena turned to face him fully. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably going to be messy and complicated and hard, but I think it might be worth it. Might be? I'm trying not to overpromise. You've made it very clear you value honesty over romance. Despite everything, Elena laughed. I really have ruined you for normal dating, haven't I? Completely. I can never go back to shallow conversations and performative interest. You've spoiled me. They stood there in his study, the city lights glittering beyond the windows, and Elena felt herself softening despite every practical instinct screaming at her to protect herself. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, we can try, but I need you to understand that I can't be someone I'm not. I can't fit into charity galas and country clubs and whatever other rich people things you probably do. I hate charity galas, and I'm not a member of any country clubs. Emma's mother used to drag me to those things, and I was miserable every time." "What do you like to do?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "I don't know. Work, mostly. Spend time with Emma. I haven't had hobbies in years." "That's sad." "I know. Catherine used to say I was boring. You're not boring. You're just focused on the wrong things. And you're going to show me the right things? Maybe, if you're willing to learn." Adrian smiled, and Emma was right. It was different from his professional smile. Warmer, real. "I'm willing." The shift in their relationship was subtle at first. Adrian started showing up at the nonprofit on his lunch breaks, bringing coffee and sandwiches and terrible jokes that made Rachel raise her eyebrows knowingly. Emma started video calling Elena a few times a week, usually just to show her a drawing or tell her about school or ask her opinion on important matters like whether unicorns or dragons were cooler. "Definitely dragons," Elena said during one such call. "That's what I said. But Daddy thinks unicorns are better. Your daddy is wrong about many things." "I can hear you," Adrian called from somewhere off screen. "Good," Elena called back. At Lumiere, her co-workers noticed the change. Marcus cornered her during a quiet moment in the kitchen. "So you and the billionaire are actually dating now? We're seeing where things go." "That's what people say when they're dating but don't want to admit it." "Then I guess we're dating." Marcus grinned. "Good. You deserve someone who looks at you the way he does." "And how's that?" "Like you're the most interesting person in any room. Like he can't believe his luck that you're giving him the time of day." Elena didn't know what to do with that assessment, so she changed the subject to table assignments. But Marcus wasn't wrong. Adrian did look at her differently now. Like he was constantly surprised to find her real, like he was memorizing details in case she disappeared. Their first official date was at the Thai restaurant in Elena's neighborhood, the same place they'd gone before. Adrian showed up in jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "No suit?" Elena teased. "You said you didn't want expensive. I'm trying to learn." "You're doing well so far." Over pad thai and spring rolls, they talked about everything except work. Adrian told her about Emma's latest school project, a diorama of the solar system that had somehow required 3 trips to the craft store and 1 minor glue gun incident. Elena told him about Kara's new boyfriend, a computer science major who seemed nice but had questionable taste in music. "You sound like a suspicious parent," Adrian observed. "I am a suspicious parent. Kara's 19 and thinks she's invincible. Someone has to be the responsible one." "Do you ever get to not be the responsible one?" Elena considered that. "Not really. Not since my dad died." "What was he like?" The question surprised her. People rarely asked about her father, usually too uncomfortable with the topic of death to pursue it. "Funny. He could make anyone laugh, even when things were terrible. We lost our house when I was 16, ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood, and he turned it into an adventure, made up stories about the characters in our building, taught us to find beauty in small things." "You're like him." "How would you know? You never met him." "Because you do the same thing. Find beauty in small things. Make the best of impossible situations. Refuse to let circumstances define you." Elena felt tears prickling behind her eyes. "He would have liked you, I think, once he got over the billionaire thing." "Would he have been suspicious of me?" "Absolutely. You're exactly the kind of guy he'd have warned me about. Wealthy, emotionally unavailable, and arrogant? That's the one." Adrian smiled ruefully. "I can't argue with that assessment. Past tense me was definitely that guy." "And present tense you?" "Still working on it, but trying to be better." After dinner, they walked through Elena's neighborhood, past bodegas and check cashing places and apartment buildings with laundry hanging from fire escapes. It was nothing like Adrian's world of tree-lined streets and doormen, but he didn't seem uncomfortable, just curious. "This is where you grew up?" he asked. 2 blocks that way. Our building got torn down last year for luxury condos, which is ironic since there's nothing luxurious about this neighborhood except the asking prices for the new developments. Do you miss it?
The building? Sometimes. It was small and the heat barely worked in winter and you could hear everything through the walls. But it was ours. Kara and I knew every neighbor, knew which bodega had the best prices, knew which blocks to avoid after dark. Now it's all strangers with money who complain about the noise from the bars that have been here for 40 years. They stopped in front of a community garden squeezed between two buildings, flowers blooming in donated containers and painted tires. My dad started this, Elena said. He convinced the landlord to let the neighborhood use the vacant lot. We spent a summer planting flowers and vegetables. He said everyone deserved to see things grow, even in concrete. Adrian looked at the garden with new appreciation. He sounds like he was a good man. He was the best. He worked 3 jobs and still found time to help neighbors fix their cars, or babysit their kids, or translate documents for people who didn't speak English. He never had money, but he was rich in ways that matter more. Is that why you're so determined to do everything yourself? Because he taught you that asking for help was weakness? No. He taught me that helping was strength, but he also taught me that accepting help when you can't pay it back makes you beholden to people. And being beholden is its own kind of prison. What if someone doesn't want to be paid back? What if they just want to help because they care about you? Elena met his eyes. Then I'm learning to accept that, slowly, with great difficulty. I've noticed? They stood there in the gathering dusk, surrounded by flowers grown in repurposed containers, and Adrian took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental, like crossing a threshold she couldn't uncross. Is this okay? He asked. Yeah, Elena said, this is okay. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt almost normal. Adrian would pick up Emma from school twice a week and stop by the nonprofit so Emma could say hi to Elena. They'd grab dinner together, usually somewhere casual, and talk about their days. On weekends, if Elena wasn't working, they'd do something with Emma, the zoo, the museum. Once a movie that Emma picked and made both adults sit through even though it was clearly intended for much younger children. It was domestic and comfortable and exactly the kind of thing Elena had never let herself imagine. But reality had a way of intruding. The first intrusion came in the form of a phone call from her landlord. The building was being sold, and the new owners were raising rent by 30%. Elena had 30 days to either pay the increase or find a new place. She ran the numbers 17 different ways, but they never added up. Even with both jobs, even with her new nonprofit salary, she couldn't afford the increase and still cover Kara's medical expenses and her tuition. We'll find something else, Kara said when Elena told her, but they both knew the truth. Affordable apartments in safe neighborhoods didn't exist anymore. Everything in their price range was either dangerous or so far from Elena's jobs and school that the commute would be impossible. Elena didn't tell Adrian immediately. Spent 3 days looking at apartments online, each one more depressing than the last, before he noticed something was wrong. You've been distracted all evening, he said after Emma went to bed. They were at his house, had fallen into the habit of these quiet evenings after Emma's bedtime. What's going on? Elena debated lying, then decided against it. My landlord's selling our building. New owners want 30% more rent. We can't afford it. How much do you need? Adrian, how much? It's not about the money. Everything's about money when you don't have enough of it. His voice was gentle, not accusatory. How much would make the problem go away? You're not solving this for me. I'm not trying to solve it. I'm trying to help. By throwing money at it? By offering a resource I have and you need. There's a difference. Elena stood, pacing his living room with its comfortable furniture and expensive art and all the casual wealth that made problems like rent, increases abstract rather than catastrophic. Don't you see how impossible this is, she said. You live in a world where a few $1,000s is nothing, where you can just write a check and fix problems. I live in a world where a few $1,000s is the difference between having a home and sleeping in my car. Those worlds don't overlap, Adrian. They're overlapping right now. Because we're pretending they can. But eventually reality is going to force us to pick sides, and we both know which sides we belong on. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Is that what you think? That I'm just pretending to understand your life? I think you're trying. But trying isn't the same as understanding.
You can't understand what it's like to check your bank balance before buying groceries, or to avoid the doctor because you can't afford the copay, or to live every single day knowing that one emergency could destroy everything you've built. You're right. I can't understand that. But I'm trying to understand you, which isn't the same thing. Isn't it?
No. He crossed the room to where she stood. Your circumstances are part of who you are, but they're not all of who you are. I'm not falling for your circumstances. I'm falling for the person who refuses to let those circumstances define her. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Falling for? Elena's voice came out smaller than she intended.
Adrian looked like he wanted to take it back, then decided against it. Yeah, falling for present progressive tense, ongoing action. That's a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had. We're from completely different worlds. I know. This is going to end badly. Maybe, but maybe it won't. We don't know unless we actually try instead of running away every time things get hard. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to list all the practical reasons this couldn't work, but she was tired of being practical, tired of protecting herself from every possible hurt, tired of living like happiness was something other people got to experience. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What are you scared of? Adrian took a breath. Losing you. Losing this. Waking up one day and finding out you've decided I'm not worth the complications, that Emma's not worth the complications. Emma's always worth it. And me? Elena looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the money and the mansion and the privilege, saw a man who'd lost his wife and learned to parent alone, who was trying to be better than he'd been, who looked at her like she was the most valuable thing in any room. You're worth it too, she said quietly. Even when you're impossible, especially when you're impossible. Adrian kissed her then, gentle and questioning, and Elena let herself kiss him back. Let herself want this, complications and all. When they broke apart, she was smiling despite herself. We're really doing this? She asked. I think we've been doing this for a while. We're just admitting it now. I still can't let you pay my rent. I know. Or solve my problems with money. I know that too. So what are you going to do? Adrian thought about it. I'm going to stand beside you while you solve your own problems, and maybe occasionally point out solutions you might not have considered, and definitely make sure you're eating real meals instead of vending machine food. That's very specific. Rachel told me you've been living on crackers and coffee. Rachel needs to mind her own business. Rachel cares about you. We all do. The "we all" settled something in Elena's chest. The idea that she had people, that she wasn't alone in this. Okay, she said. Okay what? Okay to all of it, to trying, to letting you help in ways that don't involve writing checks, to seeing where this goes. Just to be clear, this conversation started because of a rent problem that's going to need solving. I'll figure something out. We'll figure something out. The correction was small but significant. Elena nodded. They found a solution 3 days later. Not Adrian's money, but Adrian's connections. He knew someone who owned a building in Logan Square, someone who owed him a favor and happened to have a vacancy. The rent was only slightly more than Elena had been paying, and the apartment was bigger, safer, closer to both her jobs. This feels like charity, Elena said when they toured the place. It's market rate for this neighborhood. I just happened to know about it before it was listed. Adrian, Elena, it's an apartment. You're paying rent. This isn't charity, it's networking, which you said you were trying to learn. She wanted to argue but couldn't find the logical flaw in his reasoning. They moved in 2 weeks later with help from Marcus and Rachel, and surprisingly, Adrian, who showed up in old jeans and actually carried boxes without complaining. Emma helped Kara decorate her new room, the two of them becoming fast friends over a shared love of fantasy novels and bubble tea. Your sister's cool, Emma announced. Can she come to my next birthday party? That's 11 months away, Adrian pointed out. I'm planning ahead. In the new apartment with its working heat and windows that actually closed all the way, Elena let herself breathe. Let herself believe that maybe things could work out, that maybe she didn't have to do everything alone. That night, after everyone left and it was just her and Kara in their new home, her sister hugged her tight. I'm proud of you, Kara said. For what? I I didn't do anything? You let people help. You let yourself want something beyond just surviving. That's huge. Elena hugged her back, blinking away tears. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. Later, alone in her new room, Elena looked around at the space that was hers. Not perfect, not luxurious, but safe and affordable and exactly what she needed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Emma wants to know if you'll come to her school play next week. It's about the solar system and she's playing Mars. Of course I'll be there, Elena typed back. She's very excited. Fair warning, there will be a lot of papier-mâché planets and questionable special effects. Sounds perfect. Thank you, Adrian sent, for letting us in. I know it wasn't easy. Elena thought about about how hard she'd fought against connection, against vulnerability, against the possibility that maybe she deserved good things. Thank you for being patient, she replied, for not giving up when I kept pushing you away, never going to give up on you. You're stuck with me now. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Elena smiled at her phone, at the gentle certainty in his words, and let herself believe him. Emma's school play was exactly as advertised. Papier-mâché planets suspended by visible fishing line, cardboard stars that wobbled when kids walked past them, and a sun made from what appeared to be an exercise ball wrapped in yellow construction paper. Elena sat between Adrian and his mother in folding chairs that squeaked every time anyone shifted weight, watching 8-year-olds recite facts about the solar system with varying degrees of accuracy and enthusiasm. Emma, dressed in an orange costume that was supposed to represent Mars, delivered her lines with absolute conviction. I am the red planet, she announced to the audience. I have 2 moons, and scientists think I might have had water a long time ago, which means maybe there was life, but now I'm just cold and dusty and alone. That got dark fast, Elena whispered to Adrian. Her teacher let them improvise their endings. Emma's been very interested in loneliness lately. He said it casually, but Elena heard the concern underneath. After the play, Emma ran to them still wearing her Mars costume, face flushed with excitement. Did you see me? Did you like my improvisation? You were the best Mars I've ever seen, Elena said honestly. Was I better than the sun? Because Jacob forgot his lines and just stood there.
Everyone forgets lines sometimes. You handled yours perfectly. Emma beamed, then grabbed Elena's hand. Come meet my teacher. I told her all about you. The teacher, a woman in her 30s with paint stains on her cardigan, smiled warmly when Emma dragged Elena over. You must be Elena. Emma talks about you constantly. Hopefully good things. Very good things. She says you're the smartest person she knows, and that you speak 5 languages and work with people who don't have money to help them start businesses. Elena shot a look at Emma, who was already distracted by classmates comparing costumes. That's a generous interpretation of my job. Emma tends toward generous interpretations of people she loves. The teacher's expression was knowing. It's nice that she has more adults in her life who care about her. Losing her mother so young was devastating. She's doing much better now than she was a year ago. The observation sat heavy. Elena hadn't thought about the long timeline of Emma's grief, about how recent better actually was. On the drive back to Adrian's house, Emma chattered nonstop about the play, about who forgot their lines, about how the Mercury kid stepped on Venus's foot during the orbital rotation scene. Elena listened, responding when appropriate, but her mind was elsewhere. You're quiet, Adrian observed after Emma went to wash off her Mars makeup. Her teacher said she's doing better than a year ago. What was she like a year ago? Adrian's expression closed off slightly, the way it always did when talking about the worst parts of Emma's grief. Quiet. She stopped talking to most people except me. Stopped wanting to play with friends. Had nightmares every night about me leaving too. That's terrible. It was. Her therapist said it was normal for kids who lose a parent, but normal doesn't make it easier to watch. He poured himself a glass of water, hands not quite steady. The worst part was knowing I couldn't fix it. Couldn't make her understand that death isn't something you can prevent through vigilance or worry. When did it start getting better? Gradually, therapy helped, time helped. And honestly, you helped. Elena looked up sharply. I barely knew her a year ago. I know. But around the time I met you, I started being different at home. Less withdrawn, less focused on work as an escape. Emma noticed.
She asked me why I was happier, and I told her about the waitress who called me out for being arrogant. She latched onto that story, wanted to hear it again and again. That's a weird story for a 7-year-old to be obsessed with. She liked that someone made me face consequences, made me be better. I think it helped her feel like the world had rules again, like bad behavior got corrected. Adrian set down his glass. She asked me if you were going to be her new mom about 3 months before I introduced you properly. Elena's heart stuttered. What did you tell her? The truth. That I didn't know what you and I were, but that relationships were complicated and she shouldn't get her hopes up. How'd she take that? She said hopes don't work that way. You can't control them, you just have them and see what happens. She's too wise for 8. She's her mother's daughter. Catherine was like that too. Saw through bullshit, demanded honesty, believed in hope even when it was impractical. Elena heard the grief in his voice, the love that hadn't diminished despite years passing. You still love her. I'll always love her. She gave me Emma. She made me better than I would have been. But she's gone, and I can't live the rest of my life in the past. He met Elena's eyes. I don't want to. The honesty in his voice made Elena's chest ache. I'm not trying to replace her. I know, and I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to be you, which is exactly what Emma and I need. Emma reappeared then, face scrubbed clean, wearing pajamas with planets on them because apparently the solar system theme was all-consuming. Can Elena stay for movie night? She asked Adrian. That's up to Elena. Both of them turned to look at her expectantly. Elena thought about her early shift at Lumiere tomorrow, about the laundry sitting in her apartment, about all the practical reasons to go home. What movie? She asked instead. Emma's face lit up. You get to pick. They ended up watching an animated film about dragons that Elena had seen approximately 17 times with Kara. She sat on the couch with Emma, curled against her side. Adrian's arm stretched across the back of the couch, not quite touching her shoulders, but close enough to feel his presence. Halfway through, Emma fell asleep with her head on Elena's lap. Should we move her to bed? Elena whispered. In a minute. She'll wake up if we move her too soon. So they sat there in the flickering light of the television, Emma sleeping peacefully between them, and Elena felt something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously like belonging. I could get used to this, Adrian said quietly. Movie nights? This. All of it. You being here. Emma comfortable enough with you to fall asleep. Feeling like maybe we're building something real. Elena looked at Emma's sleeping face, peaceful in a way that apparently hadn't always been guaranteed. What if I mess this up? What if I let her down? You won't. You can't know that. I know you. Know you'd walk through fire before you'd hurt someone you care about. Know you've been taking care of people your whole adult life and probably before that. Know that Emma's instincts about people are good and she trusts you completely. That's a lot of pressure. Love usually is. The word hung in the air between them. Love. Not falling anymore, but arrived. Present tense. Adrian, you don't have to say it back. I'm not expecting anything. I just need you to know that's where I am. Where I've been for a while now, if I'm being honest. Elena looked at him in the dim light, this man who'd started as someone she'd put in his place and become someone she couldn't imagine not having in her life. I'm terrified, she admitted. Of what? Of how much I care about both of you, of how quickly this became important, of how catastrophic it would be if I lost it. So you do feel it too. Of course I feel it. I'm just scared to name it. Adrian shifted closer, careful not to wake Emma. What if we just let it be unnamed for now? No pressure, no labels, just this. Is that enough? Elena thought about her life before Adrian and Emma. The loneliness she'd convinced herself was independence. The walls she'd built and called them strength. The way she'd made survival a virtue because admitting she wanted more felt dangerous. It's more than enough, she said. It's everything. They carried Emma to bed together, Elena pulling the covers up while Adrian tucked her favorite stuffed dragon beside her. The domesticity of it should have felt foreign, but instead it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Stay tonight, Adrian said when they were back downstairs. It's late. You have an early shift tomorrow, and I have 3 guest rooms. Very practical reasons. Those are terrible excuses. I know. I'm trying to give you plausible deniability. Elena laughed despite herself. For what? for wanting to stay, for wanting to wake up knowing we're under the same roof, for wanting to have coffee together in the morning before you go to work. That's still not staying in the same room. I know, baby steps. I'm learning about patience, remember?
Elena did stay in a guest room that was bigger than her bedroom in the new apartment,
With sheets that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She texted Kara to let her know where she was, got back a string of emoji that somehow conveyed both excitement and "I told you so," and fell asleep thinking about how her life had become something she barely recognized. The morning coffee was exactly as nice as Adrian had promised. They sat at his kitchen island while dawn light crept through the windows, talking about nothing important and everything important, and Elena thought about how happiness could be this simple. Just coffee and conversation and the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with words.
I have a business dinner next week, Adrian said as Elena was getting ready to leave for her shift. Some investors from the West Coast. Very boring, very formal. Would you consider coming with me? Elena paused in pulling on her jacket. As your date? As my girlfriend, technically, but we can call it whatever you're comfortable with. Girlfriend. That's very high school. Partner sounds too businesslike. Significant other sounds like I'm trying too hard. Girlfriend is simple. Girlfriend it is, then. Elena tested the word, found it fit better than she expected. But I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a fancy business dinner. We can fix that. If you say you're buying me a dress, I'm walking out right now. Adrian held up his hands. I was going to say my mother probably has connections to personal shoppers who work on commission and would be happy to help you find something in your budget. That's oddly specific. I've been practicing how to offer help without it sounding like charity. Rachel gave me a tutorial. Rachel needs to stop being so helpful. Rachel cares about you, so do I. So does Emma. You're going to have to accept that we want good things for you. Elena kissed him instead of arguing, quick and sweet, then headed out to face her shift at Lumiere. The restaurant was slammed that night, some corporate event that had booked half the dining room and required precision timing for every course. Elena moved through the chaos on autopilot, taking orders and delivering food and managing complaints from people who thought waiting 20 minutes for a table at a fully booked restaurant was an unacceptable hardship. You're smiling, Marcus observed during a rare quiet moment. Actual genuine smiling. This is new. I smile. Not like that. That's the smile of someone who got laid or fell in love or possibly both. I'm not discussing my personal life with you. So definitely both. Good for you. Elena rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. The business dinner the following week was exactly as intimidating as she'd feared. Held at a restaurant that made Lumiere look casual, full of people in designer clothes discussing quarterly projections and market disruptions. Adrian's mother had indeed connected her with a personal shopper who'd helped her find a dress that was elegant without being flashy, professional without being boring, and most importantly, within her budget. You look beautiful, Adrian said when he picked her up, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe it. I look like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. You look like you belong exactly where you are. The dinner tested that theory. Elena found herself seated between Adrian and a venture capitalist named Richard, who spent the first 20 minutes talking at her about cryptocurrency without once asking what she did or who she was. On her other side, a woman named Diane at least had the courtesy to make eye contact when introducing herself. So how do you know Adrian? Diane asked. Elena had practiced this answer, had prepared something diplomatic about meeting through mutual connections. Instead, she heard herself say, I served him dinner once and called him out for being arrogant. Somehow, we became friends after that. Diane laughed, surprised and genuine. I like you already. Adrian needs people who won't take his bullshit. That's what his mother says. His mother is a wise woman. So what do you do when you're not keeping billionaires humble? Elena explained her work with the nonprofit, and for the first time all evening, felt like herself instead of Adrian's accessory. Diane turned out to be a foundation director with connections to grant programs Elena hadn't known existed. They talked for 30 minutes about microfinance models and community partnership strategies, and Elena forgot to be nervous. You should meet my program director, Diane said, pulling out her phone. She's always looking for innovative approaches to poverty alleviation. Would you be open to a meeting? Absolutely. Excellent. I'll make the introduction. Diane glanced at Adrian, who was deep in conversation with Richard about something that involved a lot of hand gestures.
He's different with you, you know? Different how? Less performative, more present. Adrian's brilliant at business, but he tends to disappear into it, use it as armor against actually connecting with people. But tonight, he keeps looking over at you like he's checking that you're still there, that you're okay. It's sweet. Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled. The evening ended with Adrian walking her to his car, his hand warm on the small of her back. "You were amazing tonight," he said. "I barely talked to anyone except Diane. You were yourself. Didn't pretend to be interested in crypto when Richard was being insufferable. Didn't laugh at jokes that weren't funny. Didn't perform for anyone. It was perfect. I thought I was supposed to make a good impression. You made the best impression. You showed them exactly who you are, and that's someone worth knowing." Elena leaned against the car, looking up at him in the streetlight. "Thank you for bringing me tonight, for not hiding me away because I don't fit into your world. You fit perfectly into my world. My world is better because you're in it. That's very smooth. I've been practicing." "How long have you been practicing?" "Since about 10 minutes into dinner, when I realized I'd rather be anywhere else as long as you were there too." Elena pulled him down to kiss her, not caring that they were on a public street, not caring about the expensive restaurant behind them or the people who might see, caring only about this moment, this man, this impossible thing they were building together. When they broke apart, Adrian was smiling. "Should I take that as approval of my romantic declarations? Take it as me being happy, genuinely, surprisingly happy." "Good. You deserve happy." The meeting Diane set up led to a consulting opportunity with the foundation, extra income that meant Elena could finally quit Lumiere. Her last shift was on a Thursday night in late June, and Marcus organized a goodbye party in the kitchen after closing. "You're abandoning us for the world of legitimate employment," he said, presenting her with a cake that said, "Good luck not being poor anymore." "That's the worst cake message I've ever seen." "I know. I made them write it specifically." Elena hugged him, surprised by how emotional she felt leaving a job she'd spent months complaining about. "Thank you for making this place bearable. Thank you for showing us that getting out is possible. Half the staff is updating their resumes because of you. That's probably bad for the restaurant." "Fuck the restaurant. People matter more than business." Sarah gave her a reference letter that was probably too generous, and the kitchen staff gave her a spatula signed by everyone with messages ranging from heartfelt to obscene. Elena left Lumiere for the last time with a box of kitchen equipment she'd accumulated and a sense of closing a chapter she'd never thought would end. Adrian was waiting outside, leaning against his car in the late summer darkness. "You didn't have to pick me up," Elena said. "I wanted to. This is a big moment. End of an era. End of being treated like furniture by rich people who don't tip well. See, when you put it that way, it's much less poetic." Elena loaded her box into his trunk. "I'm going to miss it a little. Is that weird?" "Not weird. It was part of your life for a long time. Part of how you survived. Makes sense to feel something about leaving it behind." They drove through Chicago's late-night streets, past places Elena had walked hundreds of times on her way to and from shifts. The city looked different from inside Adrian's car, softer somehow, full of possibility instead of just obstacles. "Emma wants to know if you'll come to the lake house next weekend," Adrian said. "My mother will be there, which is either a selling point or a warning depending on how you feel about maternal interrogation." "Lake house? Family place in Michigan. We go most summers for a few weeks. It's quiet, peaceful, good for Emma. I know it's a lot to ask, spending a weekend with my family." "I'd love to," Elena interrupted. "Really? Really? As long as Kara can come too. I don't want to leave her alone all weekend." "Of course Kara can come. Emma will be thrilled. She's been trying to convince Kara to join her book club for weeks." "Emma has a book club?" "Emma and 2 neighborhood kids who meet once a month to discuss fantasy novels and eat too many cookies. It's very serious business." The lake house was nothing like Elena expected. She'd pictured something modest, maybe a cabin. Instead, it was a sprawling property with a private beach and enough bedrooms to house a small army. But Adrian had been right about the atmosphere. Despite its size, it felt peaceful, lived in. "This was Catherine's favorite place," Adrian's mother explained while showing Elena to her room. "She loved the quiet. Used to say it was the only place Adrian remembered how to be human instead of a businessman." "It's beautiful." "It is. And it's good to have life here again." After Catherine died, Adrian stopped coming, said it hurt too much. But last summer he brought Emma back, and this summer he's bringing you. That means something. Elena looked out the window at the lake, golden in the late afternoon sun. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. And I'm not asking you to, but I am asking you to understand what it means that my son is letting you into this place. He doesn't do it lightly. That evening, they had dinner on the deck overlooking the water. Emma and Kara were already fast friends, talking about books and magic systems and which Hogwarts house they'd be in. Adrian's mother told embarrassing stories about Adrian's childhood, including one about him starting a business selling rocks to neighbors when he was 7. They were very nice rocks, Adrian protested. They were rocks from our driveway that you charged $5 for. And people bought them. That's called understanding your market. That's called taking advantage of polite neighbors who felt sorry for a persistent child. Elena laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. This version of Adrian, embarrassed and defensive and utterly human, was her favorite. Later, after Emma and Kara went to bed and Adrian's mother retired to her room with a knowing smile, Elena and Adrian walked down to the beach. The water was dark and quiet, stars reflected on its surface. I haven't been this happy in years, Adrian said quietly. Maybe ever. Even when Catherine was alive? That was different. Good, but complicated by grief over her illness. She was sick for 2 years before she died. We knew it was coming, tried to make the most of the time we had. But there was always this shadow, this countdown. He picked up a stone, turned it over in his hands. With you, there's no shadow. Just possibility. Elena took his hand. I'm scared of being that possibility. Scared of what it means if I can't live up to it. You're already living up to it just by being here, by being you, by not running away every time things get real. I'm still learning not to run. I know, but you're getting better at it. They stood there at the water's edge, 2 people from impossible circumstances who'd somehow found each other, and Elena let herself believe that maybe sometimes impossible things worked out anyway. The weekend passed too quickly. Days of swimming and reading and long conversations on the deck, evenings of family dinners and board games and Emma's dramatic readings from her favorite books, nights of sitting by the fire while Emma and Kara roasted marshmallows and argued about fictional character motivations. On the last night, Emma climbed into Elena's lap during the fire, something she'd started doing more frequently. I wish we could stay here forever, Emma said. Me too, kiddo. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to stay, like, in our lives? Not just for this weekend? Elena's breath caught. She looked over at Adrian, who was very deliberately not listening to this conversation. I'm planning on it, she said carefully. Is that okay with you? It's better than okay. Daddy's happier when you're around. He smiles, real smiles instead of business smiles. You keep track of your dad's smile types? I have to. It's important to know when grown-ups are really happy versus when they're just pretending. That's very wise. I learned it from my therapist. She says it's okay to want people to stay, but also okay to be scared they'll leave. Both feelings can be true at the same time. Elena hugged her closer. Both feelings are definitely true at the same time. Are you scared I'll leave? Sometimes. Not because I want to, but because life is unpredictable, and sometimes things happen that we can't control. But you'll try to stay? I'll try very hard. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer, settling more comfortably against Elena's shoulder. Across the fire, Adrian caught her eye and mouthed, "Thank you." The drive back to Chicago on Sunday evening was quiet. Kara fell asleep in the back seat, Emma dozed against her shoulder, and Elena watched the landscape change from lake country back to highway back to city. That was really nice, she said to Adrian. It was. We should do it again. When? Whenever you want. The house is always available. Elena thought about that, about having access to a lake house whenever she wanted, about being part of something bigger than just her and Kara's survival, about building a life instead of just enduring one. I could get used to this, she said, echoing his words from weeks ago. Good, because I'm not planning on letting you go. That's very possessive. Is it? I can rephrase. No, I kind of like it. Adrian smiled, reaching over to take her hand. Good, because I meant it. The The following weeks settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable for the first time in years. Elena worked at the nonprofit and consulted for Diane's foundation. Kara started community college with a partial scholarship and a work-study job that covered her books. Adrian continued running his business empire, but made time for dinner with Elena most nights, for Emma's school events, for the small moments that added up to a life.
They weren't perfect. Elena still struggled with accepting help, still had moments where she'd try to do everything herself until Adrian or Kara or Rachel gently reminded her that partnership meant sharing burdens. Adrian still defaulted to solving problems with money, still had to consciously stop himself from steamrolling over Elena's independence with his resources and connections. But they were trying. And trying, Elena was learning, was enough. The morning Elena defended her thesis, Adrian and Emma and Kara all showed up to watch. She hadn't expected them, had said it wasn't necessary, but there they were in the audience when she walked into the conference room. She presented her research on microfinance accessibility in underserved urban communities, fielded questions from her committee, and walked out an hour later with a master's degree and the knowledge that she'd earned every bit of it. "I'm so proud of you," Adrian said, pulling her into a hug in the hallway outside. "We're so proud," Emma corrected, inserting herself between them for a group hug. Kara joined in, and for a moment they stood there in the university hallway, this makeshift family that had formed from impossible circumstances and stubborn hope. "I can't believe I actually finished," Elena said, still slightly dazed. "I can," Kara said. "You're the most determined person I know." "Second most," Emma said. "My dad's pretty determined too. He spent 6 months trying to get Elena to let him help before she finally agreed to coffee." "That's not quite how it happened," Adrian protested. "That's exactly how it happened. I heard you tell Grandma." They celebrated with lunch at the Thai restaurant in Elena's neighborhood, the same place she and Adrian had gone for their first sort of date, the same place where she'd started letting herself believe that maybe she could have more than just survival. "What's next?" Adrian asked as they ate pad thai and spring rolls. "I don't know. Keep working at the nonprofit. Keep consulting. Maybe apply for some director-level positions in a few years." "That's all very practical. What do you want?" Elena thought about it. For so long, want had felt dangerous. Wanting meant hoping, and hoping meant the possibility of disappointment. But sitting there surrounded by people she loved, people who loved her back, want didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt like possibility. "I want this," she said. "All of it. The work that matters, the family that chose me, the life that's mine instead of just circumstances I'm surviving. I want to keep building this." Adrian smiled, that real smile Emma tracked so carefully. "Then let's keep building it." And they did. Building a life turned out to be messier than Elena had anticipated. It wasn't the smooth progression she'd imagined, where everything fell neatly into place once she stopped fighting against happiness. Instead, it was a series of adjustments and compromises, and learning to navigate the space between two very different worlds. The first real test came 4 months after her thesis defense, when the nonprofit offered her a promotion to Director of Community Partnerships. It was everything she'd worked toward: more responsibility, better salary, the chance to shape programs instead of just implementing them. It was also terrifying. "You're going to take it, right?" Kara asked when Elena told her about the offer. "I don't know. It's a lot of responsibility. What if I'm not ready?" "You've been ready for years. You've just been too busy surviving to notice." But it wasn't just about being ready. The new position would mean longer hours, more travel to community sites, evening meetings with board members and donors. It would mean less time for the consulting work with Diane's foundation, less time for Emma's school events and weekend trips to Michigan, less time for the life she was still learning to live. "You're overthinking this," Adrian said when she brought it up over dinner at his place. Emma was at a sleepover, giving them rare time alone. "I'm thinking exactly the right amount." "You're catastrophizing. There's a difference." Elena pushed food around her plate. "What if I take this job and everything else falls apart? What if I can't balance it all?" "Then we'll figure it out. That's what partnerships are for." "Easy for you to say. You have a nanny and a housekeeper and probably 17 assistants who manage your calendar." 3 assistants, actually, and you're deflecting." He wasn't wrong. Elena set down her fork. "I'm scared that if I focus on my career, I'll lose this. Us. That I'll become so consumed by work that I'll turn into the kind of person who misses the important things." Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand.
Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? Probably not, but you're going to tell me anyway. I see someone who's never missed an important thing in her life, who worked 3 jobs and still made it to her sister's doctor appointments, who studied international business while serving food and somehow found time to actually care about the people she was serving, who showed up for Emma's school play even though you were exhausted from a double shift. He squeezed her hand. Taking this job won't change who you are. It'll just give you more resources to be that person on a larger scale. You're very good at pep talks. I've been practicing. Elena smiled despite her anxiety. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I get promoted and everyone realizes I'm just faking competence? Imposter syndrome is very common among high achievers. Emma's therapist told me that. You discussed my career anxiety with a child psychologist? I discussed my concerns about supporting you through a major life transition. She had insights. You're ridiculous. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Elena took the job. Her first day as director was chaos. Back-to-back meetings, a funding crisis that required immediate attention, and a computer system that chose that exact moment to crash. She came home at 9 p.m. completely drained, to find Adrian and Emma waiting with takeout and moral support. How was it? Emma asked, bouncing with enthusiasm that Elena definitely didn't feel. Overwhelming. But good overwhelming or bad overwhelming? Elena thought about it. Both. Definitely both. That's normal, Emma said with the confidence of someone repeating wisdom from adults. Daddy says all good things are scary at first. Your daddy is annoyingly wise. I know, it's kind of his thing. The learning curve was steep. Elena made mistakes. Hired the wrong person for a key position, miscalculated a grant budget, accidentally offended a major donor by being too direct about structural problems in their funding approach. Each mistake felt catastrophic in the moment, but she learned to course correct, to apologize when necessary, to ask for help instead of pretending she had all the answers. You're doing better than you think, Rachel told her after a particularly rough board meeting where Elena had defended a controversial program expansion. Half the board is terrified of you now, which means you're doing something right. I don't want them terrified. I want them supportive. Sometimes terrified leads to supportive. You're not letting them hide behind comfortable solutions anymore. That's uncomfortable for people who've been comfortable their whole lives. The truth of it settled in Elena's chest. She'd spent so long trying to fit into spaces that weren't built for her, trying to make herself smaller and quieter and more acceptable. Taking up space, demanding better, refusing to accept inadequate solutions. These were muscles she was still developing. Adrian noticed the shift. You're different lately, he said one evening while they were cooking dinner together. It had become their routine on nights when Emma had activities. Adrian would leave work early, Elena would come straight from the nonprofit, and they'd make something simple while catching up on their days. Different how? More confident, less apologetic. You walk into rooms like you belong there now. I'm faking it. Everyone's faking it. The difference is you're doing it while actually making things better instead of just protecting your own interests. Elena chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. One of the board members told me today that I'm too aggressive in my community outreach, said I should focus more on sustainable partnerships with established institutions instead of chasing grassroots connections that might not pan out. What did you say? I told him that sustainable partnerships with established institutions are exactly how we've failed these communities for decades. That grassroots connections are the only thing that actually works because they're built on trust instead of transactions. How'd he take that? About as well as you'd expect from a man who thinks his MBA makes him an expert on poverty. Adrian laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I'm so glad you exist. Because I'm rude to rich people? Because you refuse to let anyone's comfort matter more than doing what's right. Even mine, which I appreciate even when it's inconvenient. The relationship with Adrian's social circle remained complicated. Some of his friends and business associates treated Elena with cautious respect, clearly uncertain how to categorize a woman who'd been their waitress and was now their peer's partner. Others were openly dismissive, making comments about her background that they clearly thought were subtle, but absolutely weren't. The worst was at a charity gala Adrian had convinced her to attend. Elena wore a dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, still modest by the room's standards, but elegant enough not to feel completely out of place. She'd been talking to a group of foundation directors about program evaluation metrics when a woman named Patricia interrupted. I'm sorry, I have to ask, did you really used to serve tables at Lumiere? The conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at Elena.
Yes, she said evenly. I worked there for about a year. How fascinating. And now you're running a nonprofit? That's quite the trajectory. The way she said it made it clear she didn't find it fascinating at all. She found it suspicious. Education and opportunity will do that, Elena replied, keeping her voice pleasant. Turns out talent exists in lots of places, not just Ivy League schools and country clubs.
Patricia's smile tightened.
Of course. I just think it's wonderful that Adrian is so supportive of your ambitions.
The implication was clear, that Elena was a project, a charity case, someone Adrian was supporting rather than choosing. Elena felt Adrian tense beside her, but she put a hand on his arm before he could respond. Adrian supports my work because it's valuable, she said, no longer bothering with pleasantness. Just like I support his work when it's actually contributing something meaningful to the world, instead of just making rich people richer. We're partners, not a rescue operation. If you can't understand that, maybe it says more about your relationships than ours. She walked away before Patricia could respond, heading for the bathroom because she needed a moment to breathe before she said something truly unforgivable. Adrian found her 5 minutes later, leaning against the sink in the empty bathroom. You okay? People like her make me want to scream. I know. I'm sorry, I should have said something. I don't need you to defend me. I can handle Patricia and everyone like her. I know you can, but I want to. Want them to know that talking to you like that isn't acceptable. Elena looked at him in the mirror. Did you hear what I said to her? About your work? About me making rich people richer? Yeah, I heard. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? It's true. Most of what I do is exactly that. You've been telling me that in various ways since we met. But this was different. This was me using it as a weapon. Adrian moved behind her, hands gentle on her shoulders. You were defending yourself and us. I'm not offended. If anything, I'm grateful you didn't let her make you feel small. I'm tired of feeling like I have to prove I belong, like my worth is constantly being questioned because I didn't come from money. I know, and I'm sorry that being with me puts you in situations where that happens more often. Elena turned to face him. It's not your fault. Isn't it? My world is full of Patricias who think money equals worth. I brought you into that world. I chose to be in that world, and I'm choosing to stay in it. Patricia and everyone like her be damned. She straightened her shoulders. But I'm not changing who I am to make them comfortable. If they can't handle someone who worked her way up instead of being born into privilege, that's their problem. I love you, Adrian said, the words simple and direct. Elena's breath caught. They danced around it for months, implied it in 1,000 ways, but neither had said it directly. You choose now to tell me that? When I'm having a crisis in a bathroom at a charity gala? Seemed like good timing. You needed to hear it. You're terrible at romantic moments. I know. But I mean it. I love you. Love how you refuse to compromise your values. Love how you call me out when I'm being impossible. Love how you show Emma what strength looks like. Love all of it, even when it's inconvenient or complicated or makes people like Patricia uncomfortable. Elena kissed him, not caring that they were in a public bathroom, not caring that she was probably ruining her lipstick. I love you too, she said when they broke apart. Even though you have terrible timing and 3 assistants and a deeply annoying habit of being right about things. Only 3? I'll work on finding more complaints. They skipped the rest of the gala, going instead to a diner near Elena's old apartment where the coffee was bad and the pie was good and nobody cared who they were or where they came from. This is better than the gala, Adrian said, eating apple pie that definitely came from a box. Everything is better than the gala. Next time I'll just make a donation and skip the event. Next time we'll both skip it and do something actually meaningful with our evening. Adrian smiled. Deal. The proposal came 6 months later. Not at a fancy restaurant or during a romantic getaway, but on a regular Tuesday evening while they were doing dishes after dinner. Emma was upstairs doing homework, Kara was at a study group, and Elena was elbow-deep in soapy water when Adrian said, I want to marry you. Elena nearly dropped the plate she was washing. What? I want to marry you. Not now,
Not necessarily soon, but eventually. I want you to know that's where I am, where I've been for a while. You're proposing while I'm doing dishes? I'm not proposing. I'm declaring intent. There's a difference. Elena set down the plate carefully. What's the difference? A proposal requires a ring and a question. This is just me telling you what I want so you can think about whether it's what you want too. That's possibly the least romantic thing anyone has ever said. I know, but I'm trying to be honest instead of romantic, trying to give you space to actually consider it instead of putting you on the spot. Elena dried her hands, turning to face him fully. What brought this on? Emma asked me this morning if you were going to be her stepmom. I told her I didn't know, that it was up to you and me to decide together. She said she hoped so because she liked having you around. Adrian leaned against the counter. And I realized I want that too. Want it to be official. Want Emma to know you're permanent. Want you to know I'm not going anywhere. We haven't even been together a year. I know. Which is why I'm not actually proposing, just telling you that's the direction I'm headed. You can take all the time you need to figure out if you're headed the same way. Elena thought about it, about what marriage would mean, about legally binding herself to someone, about being a stepmother to Emma, about all the ways it could go wrong. But she also thought about what they'd built together, about how Adrian had learned to offer help without making her feel small, about how she'd learned to accept support without feeling like she was losing herself, about Emma and the way she'd started calling Elena when she had a bad day at school, just to hear her voice, about Kara and how she'd stopped worrying quite so much because she knew Elena had backup now. I'm not ready to get married right now, she said carefully. Okay, but I'm not opposed to the idea. Eventually, when it feels right. Also okay, you're being very calm about this. I'm terrified, actually, but I'm trying to be mature about it. Elena smiled. How's that going? Poorly. I keep wanting to convince you with elaborate arguments about why we should get married immediately. Please don't. I won't, but know that the arguments are there if you ever want to hear them. I'll keep that in mind. The actual proposal came 8 months later, and it was somehow both more and less dramatic than Elena had expected. They were at the lake house with Emma and Kara, one of those perfect summer evenings where the water was calm and the sunset painted everything gold. Emma and Kara had gone down to the beach to look for interesting rocks, leaving Elena and Adrian alone on the deck. I have something for you, Adrian said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Elena's heart started racing. Adrian, before you panic, just look at it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single stone that caught the fading light. It was Catherine's, Adrian said quietly. Her engagement ring. I had it reset because I didn't want you to feel like you were wearing her ring exactly, but I wanted you to have something that connected you to that part of my life, to Emma's history. Elena stared at the ring, overwhelmed by the gesture. Are you sure? Emma and I talked about it. She thinks her mom would have liked you, would have appreciated that you loved me enough to call me on my garbage, and love Emma enough to show up for school plays and book clubs. What did Emma say when you asked her? She said her mom would want the ring to go to someone who made our family whole again. And then she made me promise to do a proper proposal, not just hand you a box while doing dishes. Elena laughed despite the tears forming. She knows you too well. She does. Adrian took the ring from the box, but didn't move to put it on her finger yet. Elena Brooks, you've made my life immeasurably better. You've made me better. You've shown Emma what strength and integrity look like. You've built something meaningful from nothing and somehow still found room for us in that life. Will you marry me? Elena looked at the ring, at Adrian's hopeful face, at the lake beyond where Emma and Kara were walking back up the beach, clearly trying to give them privacy, but obviously curious. She thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago, serving food to arrogant billionaires, and convinced that asking for help was weakness. Thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd built, how much she'd learned about letting people in. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian slipped the ring on her finger with hands that weren't quite steady, and Elena realized he'd actually been nervous, worried she might say no. I love you, he said. I love you too, even though you're impossible and dramatic and apparently conspired with your daughter about proposals. Emma will be thrilled. She helped me practice my speech.
You practiced a speech? 3 times. She made me cut out the part about quarterly projections as a metaphor for long-term commitment. Thank her for me. Emma and Kara came running up from the beach, barely containing their excitement. Did she say yes? Emma demanded. She said yes. Emma launched herself at Elena, hugging her with the full-body enthusiasm only children managed. You're going to be my stepmom. I am. This is the best day of my entire life. Kara hugged them both, tears streaming down her face. I'm so happy for you, both of you. They celebrated with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for Emma and Kara, watching the stars come out over the lake. Elena kept looking at the ring on her finger, still not quite believing it was real. Are you happy? Adrian asked later after Emma and Kara had gone to bed. Terrified and happy, both at the same time. That seems to be our specialty. It really is. The wedding itself was small, held at the lake house 6 months later with only close family and friends. Elena wore a simple dress that she'd chosen with Kara and Emma's help, and Adrian cried during the vows, which made Emma cry, which made Elena cry, which made the whole thing a beautiful mess. Rachel was her maid of honor, Marcus flew in from Chicago, and Diane gave a toast about how watching Elena navigate the nonprofit world had restored her faith in the next generation of leaders. Adrian's mother welcomed Elena officially into the family with a speech about Catherine that made everyone cry again, about how she would have approved of Adrian's choice, about how love didn't mean replacing what was lost but building something new. I never thought I'd get married, Elena told Kara during a quiet moment. Why not? Because it felt like something other people did, people who had stable lives and weren't constantly scrambling to survive. And now? Elena looked across the room at Adrian, who was dancing with Emma to a song she'd picked, both of them laughing at something. Now I think maybe I was wrong about a lot of things. Like what? Like the idea that accepting help makes you weak, that asking for what you need is selfish, that love is a luxury instead of a necessity. Elena squeezed her sister's hand. Thank you for pushing me to try, for telling me I was too scared to see what was right in front of me. That's what little sisters are for, making older sisters face their fears. You're annoyingly wise for 20. I learned from the best. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. Elena moved into Adrian's house because it made more sense for Emma's stability, but she struggled with feeling like a guest in someone else's space. They compromised by renovating one of the unused rooms into her office, a space that was entirely hers where she could work late and surround herself with her own things. Kara moved into the guest house on the property for her last 2 years of college, which solved the problem of Elena worrying about her constantly while giving Kara independence and cutting her commute to campus. This is weird, Kara said when she was unpacking, living on a billionaire's property. It's weird for me too. But good weird? Yeah, good weird. Emma adjusted faster than anyone expected. She'd been calling Elena Mom, occasionally for months before the wedding, always with a quick glance to see if it was okay. After the wedding, it became consistent. Is it weird that she calls you Mom? Adrian asked one night. A little, but good weird. Everything with us is good weird, isn't it? Pretty much. The work at the nonprofit continued to challenge and fulfill her. Elena expanded programs into 3 new neighborhoods, established partnerships with organizations she'd only dreamed of connecting with, and hired staff who understood community work because they'd lived it. She gave talks at universities about poverty and policy, always making sure to mention that she'd been a waitress not that long ago, that the path wasn't linear, that success looked different for everyone. One of those talks led to an unexpected moment. A young woman approached her afterward, looking nervous. I just wanted to say thank you, the woman said. I'm working as a server while finishing my degree, and everyone acts like it's shameful, like I should be doing better. But hearing you talk about your path made me feel like maybe I'm not failing. Maybe I'm just doing what I need to do. Elena thought about herself a year and a half ago, invisible in her server uniform, convinced that asking for more was unrealistic. You're not failing, she told the woman. You're surviving, which is harder than most people understand. And you're building skills that will serve you forever. Patience, resilience, the ability to read people and situations. Those matter more than where you went to school or what's on your resume. But how did you get from there to here? A lot of work, a lot of help I initially refused to accept, a lot of learning that asking for support isn't weakness. Elena pulled out her card. Email me. I can't promise opportunities, but I can promise to listen and maybe point you toward resources I wish I'd known about sooner."
The woman left with tears in her eyes, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. This was why the work mattered. Not just the programs and the partnerships, but the message. That dignity wasn't about where you worked or how much you had. That everyone deserved respect and opportunity. That the world's measure of success was often wrong.
2 years into the marriage, Elena got offered a position as executive director of a national foundation focused on economic mobility. It was based in Chicago, but required significant travel, a substantial salary increase, and would put her in conversation with policymakers at the highest levels. "You have to take it," Adrian said when she told him. "It's a lot of travel, a lot of time away from you and Emma." "We'll manage. This is what you've been building toward."
What if Emma needs me and I'm in Washington meeting with senators? Then I'll be here. That's what marriage is for. Elena looked at him, this man who'd started as someone she'd put in his place and become her partner in every sense. "You've really changed," she said. "So have you." "How?" "You've stopped apologizing for taking up space. Stop treating your success like it's something you have to justify. You walk into rooms now like you built them, which in a lot of ways you did." Elena took the position. The travel was hard, the work was harder, but it was also exactly what she'd needed. She shaped policy conversations, pushed back against assumptions about poverty that came from people who'd never experienced it, built coalitions between grassroots organizations and institutional funders. Adrian supported it all, managing things at home when she was gone, sending her terrible jokes via text when she was stuck in meetings, showing up for Emma's events even when Elena couldn't. "I miss you when you're gone," Emma said during one of Elena's longer trips. "I miss you too, sweetheart." "But I'm also really proud of you, Jean. Daddy showed me the article about the new policy you helped create. He says you're changing how the whole country thinks about helping people." "That's generous." "It's true. My teacher asked if you could come speak to our class about your work. I said I'd ask." "Of course I'll come speak to your class." "Even though you're super busy and important now?" "Emma, you will always be more important than any job. Always." "I know, but it's nice to hear it anyway." 5 years into the marriage, Elena stood on a stage at a national conference about economic policy, looking out at hundreds of people who'd come to hear her speak. The girl who'd served food to people who looked through her. The woman who'd placed third in the Grayson Prize and thought it might lead somewhere. The executive director who'd helped shape legislation that expanded microfinance access to underserved communities across the country. The moderator asked about her background, and Elena told the truth, about working multiple jobs, about raising her sister while drowning in debt, about the billionaire who'd mocked her in French and then learned to be better, about the little girl who'd needed to see adults being kind, about the journey from invisible server to someone whose voice actually mattered in policy conversations. "What would you tell someone who's where you were 5 years ago?" the moderator asked. Elena thought about it carefully. "I'd tell them that dignity isn't conditional, that it's not something you earn through accomplishment or money or the right credentials. It's inherent. You have it whether you're serving food or running a foundation or anywhere in between." She paused. "I'd also tell them that accepting help doesn't make you weak, that partnership isn't surrender, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you can't do everything alone." That's not a very American message. We're all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Bootstraps are a myth created by people who've never had to actually survive on minimum wage. Real strength is building community, is asking for what you need, is showing up for people even when it's hard, is letting people show up for you. In the audience, she could see Adrian and Emma, both smiling. Kara was there too, now in her final year of college and thriving. Rachel had flown in from Chicago. Even Marcus had made the trip, claiming he needed to see Elena being all important and stuff. After the panel, reporters wanted interviews. Foundation directors wanted meetings. But Elena saw the young woman hovering at the edge of the crowd, looking nervous and determined, and she made time. "I'm working 3 jobs and finishing my degree," the woman said. "Everyone keeps telling me to network, to make connections, but I don't know how. I don't know anyone. I don't have access to the rooms where things happen." Elena remembered being that woman, remembered the desperation and the determination and the bone-deep exhaustion. "What's your name?" "Sophia." "Okay, Sophia, here's what I learned.
Sometimes access comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it's a billionaire who learns to be better. Sometimes it's a mentor who sees your potential. Sometimes it's just refusing to let anyone make you feel small until they have no choice but to see you. Elena pulled out her card. Email me your resume and your career goals. I can't promise anything, but I can promise to actually look at them and connect you with people who might help.
Why would you do that?
Because someone did it for me. And because the system is rigged against people like us. But that doesn't mean we can't rig it back a little. Sophia left with tears in her eyes and hope in her expression, and Elena thought about how far she'd come. How many versions of herself she'd been. The invisible waitress, the determined student, the woman who'd learned to accept help, the wife and stepmother, the policymaker. All of them still inside her, all of them part of the person she'd become. That night, back in their hotel room, Adrian asked how she was feeling. Overwhelmed, grateful, still a little in disbelief that this is my life. It's a good life. It really is. Elena looked at him. Do you ever regret it? Meeting me that night at Lumiere? Never. Not once. Do you? I regret not throwing water in your face. I think I showed remarkable restraint. Adrian laughed. You showed remarkable grace. You could have destroyed me in front of my colleagues. Instead, you just made me question everything about myself in the best possible way.
You're welcome. I am, genuinely. You made me want to be better, made me actually become better. Elena curled against him. We made each other better. That's the point, isn't it? Not that you saved me or I fixed you, but that we both decided to be better together than we were apart. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time I stopped being so terrified of everything.
The conference ended, they went home to Chicago, and life continued in its beautiful, messy way. Emma started high school and decided she wanted to be a social worker like her mother had been. Kara graduated with honors and got accepted to graduate school. The foundation's work expanded into new states. Adrian's business continued to thrive, though he'd shifted focus to impact investing, using his wealth to fund things that actually mattered. On the anniversary of that first night at Lumiere, Adrian took Elena back to the restaurant. Same table where he'd sat with his colleagues and mocked her. Same section where she'd worked and felt invisible. This is deeply weird, Elena said, looking at the menu. I know, but I wanted to mark it somehow. The night my life actually started. Dramatic. Accurate. They ordered food they didn't really want from a server who was probably working multiple jobs and finishing a degree and fighting every day to be seen. When she came back with their meals, Elena looked at her directly. Thank you, she said, putting real weight behind the words. Not just for the service, for showing up and doing this work. It matters. The server looked surprised, then something in her expression softened. Thank you for saying that. After she left, Adrian smiled. You do that now. Make sure people feel seen. Because I remember what it's like to be invisible, to work hard and have people look right through you like you're furniture. You were never furniture. I was to most of the people I served, but not to you. Not after I called you out. Best decision I never made. You made it for me. They finished dinner, left a generous tip, and walked out into the Chicago night. The city looked different from how it had 5 years ago. Or maybe Elena was different. Maybe she'd finally learned to see herself as valuable, regardless of where she worked or how much she had. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked as they walked. How none of this went according to plan. I was going to finish my degree, get a job, build a stable life for Kara and me. That was the plan. And instead I fell in love with a billionaire and his daughter. Built a career I didn't know was possible. Started actually believing I deserved good things. She stopped walking, turning to face him. Thank you for that. For being patient while I figured it out. Thank you for giving me the chance to be patient. For not writing me off as just another arrogant rich guy. You were an arrogant rich guy. Was? Are. But you're working on it. Adrian kissed her, there on the Chicago sidewalk where anyone could see, and Elena kissed him back without hesitation. No more hiding, no more pretending she didn't want this, no more apologizing for taking up space. When they broke apart, she said, I need to tell you something. Okay. That young woman at the conference? Sophia. I'm going to hire her as my assistant. She's perfect for it, and she needs the opportunity. Of course you are. You're not surprised?
Elena, you've been doing this for 5 years now, finding people who remind you of yourself and opening doors for them. I'd be surprised if you didn't hire her. Is that bad? That I keep seeing myself in struggling young women? It's the best thing about you. You remember where you came from. You use your position to pull people up instead of pulling the ladder up behind you. That's rare. They walked home through streets that had witnessed Elena's entire journey. Past the apartment building where she'd lived with Kara when money was tightest. Past the university where she'd finished her degree. Past the nonprofit's old office where she'd started as a program manager and learned to lead. At home, Emma was still awake despite the late hour, sitting at the kitchen island with Kara, both of them laughing over something on Kara's phone. "How was dinner?" Emma asked. "Weird but good," Elena said. "That's kind of your brand." "Weird but good?" "Yeah. Nothing about our family is normal, but it all works somehow." Elena looked around at the kitchen full of people she loved. At the stepdaughter who'd taught her that love didn't require biology. At the sister who'd been patient while Elena learned to accept help. At the husband who'd learned to give help without making it feel like charity. "You're right," she said. "Nothing about this is normal. But it's ours." And that, Elena had learned, was worth more than any conventional path could have offered. Worth more than doing everything alone. Worth more than the armor of independence she'd worn for so long. The journey from invisible waitress to someone whose voice mattered in policy rooms hadn't been smooth or predictable. It had been messy and terrifying and full of moments where she'd wanted to run back to the safety of isolation. But she'd stayed, had learned to be vulnerable, had accepted that needing people didn't make her weak. That night, lying in bed next to Adrian while he slept, Elena thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. The one who'd responded to mockery with quiet dignity instead of rage. The one who'd started a chain of events that led here, to this life she could barely believe was hers. She hoped that girl would be proud. Hoped she'd see that the strength wasn't in doing everything alone. It was in learning when to ask for help. That dignity wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up authentically. That respect wasn't earned through accomplishment. It was owed to everyone, regardless of where they worked or how much they had. And she hoped that somewhere, another young woman was working a service job while building towards something bigger, was being dismissed by people who should know better, was learning that her worth wasn't conditional on anyone's approval. Because the world still needed changing, still needed people who remembered what it was like to be invisible, who refused to let others be invisible once they had the power to see them. Elena wasn't done fighting that fight. Would never be done, really. But now she had backup, had partnership, had a family that chose each other despite coming from different worlds, and that made all the difference.